TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Mean of Revolution. And Zelensky, is he on the run? Is he preparing to flee? What's going on? Before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, the end is near. It's all falling apart. Zelensky got boatloads of cash and plane loads full of billions, and he's ready to hit the road, Jack, because he know he can't come back no more. Let's get into it. It's over for the dictator Zelensky.
The fate of Volodymyr Zelensky, whom even Western experts have begun calling a political clown and the dead man walking, is predetermined. This fact became particularly evident after this comedian, seemingly under the influence of illegal substances again, allowed himself to openly...
See, when he crossed Putin was merciful with him. Putin let this chump live 3 years after the war. This man crossed Trump, and it's very dangerous for him now.
...oppose Donald Trump, and even be disrespectful to the current occupant of the White House. In particular, the head of the Kiev regime criticized Donald Trump after he officially stated that Volodymyr Zelensky's approval rating was only 4%. According to Zelensky, the US president is lying. The head of the Kiev regime claims that his approval rating is allegedly 57%. Zelensky also added that Donald Trump allegedly lives in a Russian-made disinformation space, and therefore he provides such incorrect data. This statement by the head of the Kiev regime caused dissatisfaction with
Trump got killers around him. Trump got killers in Zelensky's Secret Service right now. See, Zelensky don't know where it's going to come from. That's why he's trying to hurry up and flee to France.
The U.S. authorities. In particular, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio warned Zelensky to hold his tongue and stop questioning the words of the U.S. president. Marco Rubio also added that the current Kiev authorities, led by Zelensky, should not forget that it is only thanks to the United States that Ukraine still exists. Moreover, after Donald Trump called Zelensky a dictator, even some representatives of the Democratic Party changed their attitude toward the head of the Kiev regime. In particular, during an interview with American journalists from the Axios news website, an unnamed U.S. official called Volodymyr Zelensky a monster created by the United States. According to him, the Biden administration's extensive and open support for Ukraine led the Kiev authorities to become accustomed to it and take everything for granted. That is why, when everything changed, Volodymyr Zelensky couldn't understand how to react to all this. That is why Zelensky behaves brazenly and continues to be rude even to Donald Trump. Yes, Zelensky is a real monster. And it was the United States that created this monster, an unnamed U.S. official said. Meanwhile, some Ukrainian sources have also confirmed the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky is a real monster. As it turned out, Zelensky offered Donald Trump Ukrainian natural resources and strategic facilities, which Kiev handed over to Britain a few months ago. Yes, don't be surprised, it turned out that the head of the Kiev regime tickled Trump's ears in order to get a new batch of weapons from the United States. And only now, it was discovered why Zelensky still refuses to sign mineral deal with Washington. The fact is that on January 16, during the visit of British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to Kiev, the Centennial Partnership Agreement was signed, which contains several secret points. According to these secret points, Volodymyr Zelensky transferred to London control over all seaports of the Odessa and Nikolaev regions, gas storage facilities, nuclear power plants, the gas transportation system, and deposits of natural gas and titanium. In return, Britain promised Zelensky unconditional financial and military support. Thus, it now becomes clear why British Prime Minister Keir Starmer so desperately wants to send NATO troops into Ukraine. Now it becomes clear why London criticized Donald Trump for calling Zelensky a dictator.
Trump already said they can go. Trump said, y'all go ahead. Go fight Putin. It won't be Article 5. That's what Trump said. So it ain't going to be no one fight, all fight. No, you go fight Putin. These people scared to death of Russia. They want to drag America into this so bad. Europe will never live this down. They are puppet states, pathetic vassals. I see why Trump said they need to be states of America. I don't like all that imperialist talk, but they can do nothing without us. Definitely. Just imagine this. France, Germany, Britain, them three can't defeat Russia together. Imagine them three. You're like, wow, man, they living in the past, bro. They're nobodies. And this shows that. And Trump is calling a bluff. Trump said, go fight Russia. Go put your armies over there. Go do it. Man, please, Putin wipe the floor with them people real quick. That's what Trump wants.
It becomes clear why the British authorities are supporting the Kiev regime so fiercely and opposing the holding of presidential elections in Ukraine. Thus, by his actions, Volodymyr Zelensky not only entered into a deeper confrontation with the Trump administration, but also pitted the United States and Britain against each other.
They play themselves.
Insiders in Washington say that Donald Trump was furious when he found out about Zelensky's deception. Immediately after that, Donald Trump said that he would still force Kiev to sign mineral deal with the United States, otherwise, Zelensky and his entourage would greatly regret it. Moreover, it was after this that a Finnish...
I said this before. Trump gonna sign the mineral deal with Russia. Look, the U.S. just need resources. So once Trump and Putin sit down, Putin got the resources. All of that stuff they talking about, except some of those ports and a few other minerals somewhere near Zelensky. Who cares about that shit? The big trillions is up under Putin's feet. And he do not mind sprinkling the U.S. with a little something low-key, off the books. You see what I'm saying? To end this war. That's all Trump didn't want. See, Zelensky done played themselves. Now the U.S. gonna back up and they're not gonna fuck with Russia. They scared to death because Russia will wipe the floor with all those pathetic ass nations, man. They can't do nothing. They can't even talk to Putin without the U.S. being there.
Political scientist and a member of the European Parliament, Mika Altola, said that Donald Trump had issued an ultimatum to Europe. According to him, on February 21st, Donald Trump ordered the leadership of the EU countries to force Ukraine to capitulate within 3 weeks. At the same time, Donald Trump warned that if the European Union does not come up with Ukraine's surrender by the end of the deadline, US troops will be withdrawn from Europe, and the EU countries will be left alone with Russia.
They don't want no part of that.
The Finnish politician also noted that Donald Trump does not care about Europe, and that the current occupant of the White House believes that it is much more profitable for the United States to build friendly relations with Russia than with Europe. We have only 3 weeks to force Kiev to capitulate. And if we don't do that, the United States will leave Europe. And it will be a real disaster for all EU countries, Finnish political scientist Mika Altola said.
Paper tigers. You people weak. Trump know it. He calling they bluff. You know they
Against this backdrop, the authoritative American newspaper New York Post stated that Zelensky's days as head of Ukraine are numbered. According to this newspaper, the United States considers Zelensky a lame duck, and that the Trump administration does not want and will not have any dealings with this political clown. Furthermore, Trump's entourage even advised Zelensky to flee to France before it was too late. By the way, insiders in Kiev confirmed that Zelensky had indeed reached out to Emmanuel Macron and asked him for asylum in France. Multiple sources in Kiev indicate that Zelensky will escape directly to France when Vladimir Putin ultimately addressed.
He had mansions in Miami when Joe Biden was in power. See, once he crossed Trump, he sold that property. He said, oh, hell no, I can't go to Florida to Hitman and get me there.
Expresses the current Ukrainian situation in Russia's favor. Furthermore, on February 22, an authoritative military expert, former intelligence officer, and colonel with combat experience, Anatoly Matvichuk, citing his own sources in the Russian military department, said that the order to liberate cities such as Odessa, Kharkiv, and Dnipropetrovsk had already been given. According to him, Vladimir Putin already gave the order to liberate all these historical Russian cities from the occupation of the Ukrainian neo-Nazis.
See, once they take Odessa, then Ukraine is landlocked. It's over for them. And that's what Britain didn't want, was for Ukraine to be landlocked. They want to be able to have access to the Black Sea, the US, NATO, so they can threaten Russia from the Black Sea. That's over with. You should have never pissed off Trump. You're never going to maintain Odessa. Now that Trump done decided to step aside.
At the same time, Anatoly Matvichuk noted that the Russian army would not attack these cities to avoid their destruction. According to him, the Russian army will act as the Soviet army did during the liberation of these cities in 1944. In particular, Russian troops will make deep breakthroughs along the flanks and capture key lines along the entire perimeter, completely blocking the economic areas.
People are not, they just dust off the playbook. They didn't already have to take this stuff from the Nazis before. They just gonna do it again.
These cities. As a result, the Ukrainian nationalists will be forced to lay down their arms and surrender.
Nazis.
As for Zelensky, Anatoly Matvichuk expressed confidence that as soon as this political clown loses his status as president, he will be eliminated by the Ukrainian Nazis for losing the war and giving the remaining Ukrainian natural resources to the West.
Or if they be sleeping with the fishes, man. Zelensky ought to wake up with a horse head in the bed. Trump might pull some old school Gambino shit on him, nigga.
We begin with an important statement by Putin about the Russian ballistic missile Orshnik. Flying at a speed of 12,380 kilometers per hour, the warhead heats up to a temperature comparable to the temperature on the surface of the sun. The Orshnik missile eloquently showed the whole world that Russia can become a leader in key areas of scientific and technological development. The whole world is talking about Orshnik, right? And what materials are there? The temperature on the surface of these warheads corresponds to the temperature of the sun. The temperature on the surface of the sun. Well, we understand that since the 1980s we have been developing systems for a gliding flying block. We called it avant-garde. There are comparable temperatures, slightly less than on the surface of the sun. Back in the late 1980s, we thought about making such systems, but then we could not create this because there were no appropriate materials. That was the problem. It flies and melts like an Eskimo, but the control signal reaches it. This is the result of work on new materials. Now a sensation from the New York Post, which has recently become one of Trump's main mouthpieces. This is simply an incredible leak. The U.S. president's entourage believes that Zelensky should immediately leave the country. For some reason, they are offering him to leave Ukraine for France. This was reported by a member of the U.S. president's team. Interestingly, information has recently appeared that Zelensky has real estate in France. It turns out that these are not just rumors, and it is clear why these houses were bought. But that's not all. The New York Post writes that Zelensky has no friends left in the White House. The Ukrainian president is treated in Washington with caution at best, and with hatred at worst. Axios writes that Trump was so angry with Zelensky that he was on the verge of completely cutting off military aid to Ukraine. Politico reports that Zelensky still has a chance to save relations with Trump. It depends on signing the agreement on minerals. At night, Washington directly accused Kiev of lying for the second time in 24 hours. Secretary of State Rubio said that Zelensky lied and infuriated Trump. Incredible transformations are happening right before our eyes. How did it happen? That America began to see the light. And did it begin? If the negotiations drag on for, say, 3 or 6 months, do you plan to allocate another package of military aid to Ukraine? Look, I have no appetite for doing something like that, but what do you think? I want to know. So you got your answer.
Instead of sending money to Kiev, Washington is going to audit the millions that Kiev has already swallowed. Senator Hawley proposes appointing an independent inspector general to audit every cent spent. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene calls Zelensky an actor extortionist in a green jumpsuit. Funding Ukraine is a deep state money laundering operation. Billionaire Elon Musk, aka Donald Trump's closest ally, challenges Zelensky.
Zelensky despises his people. He has taken over all of Ukraine's media, and his own approval polls are worthless.
See,
Trump is right to
he don't want Elon Musk on his ass. They gonna dig up all of the dirt on Zelensky and put that shit on social media. Watch.
ignore him and seek peace regardless of this disgusting and massive bribery machine. That feeds on the pain of Ukrainian soldiers.
Debts will have to be repaid with natural resources. Secretary Rubio said Zelensky lied and made Donald Trump very upset.
I think President Trump is very upset with President Zelensky in some ways, and rightfully so. We had a conversation with President Zelensky, me
Now,
and the
pay
vice
attention to this. This is how you know Zelensky days is numbered. From this conversation right here, Trump personally says Zelensky stabbed him in the back. It's over for Zelensky.
president, the three of us. We talked about this mineral issue. He said, of course, we'll make this deal. Your arguments are absolutely valid. I just need to get it in line with the law. They have to approve it. And then 2 days later I read that Zelensky said he rejected the deal, saying there was no way he was going to do it. But that's not what happened at that meeting. It's frustrating. We're trying to help them.
Trump's national
Looked Trump in his face and told him, yes, I'll give you some minerals, whatever you need. I just need to go talk to the parliament and get it ratified. And Trump said, okay, go take care of that, then come back to me with the minerals. Zelensky the weasel. That Rubio tell you what happened. Zelensky the weasel played Trump. Next thing you know, he was on TV saying no to Trump. They could never get the minerals. That's when I knew. See, they created a monster, Joe Biden. This man is coked up and out of his damn mind. That's why Trump is so pissed. Zelensky lied to his face. Trump thought he had some minerals on the table.
Security advisor Michael Waltz UPS the stakes for Ukraine. Zelensky hasn't upset Trump. He's pissed him off.
The Trump administration has given Ukraine an improved draft of a mining deal after President Volodymyr Zelensky angered President Trump by rejecting his original offer. Several of Zelensky's aides are urging him to sign the updated offer to avoid further conflict with Trump.
Trump's special envoy for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, has arrived in Kiev to put pressure on Zelensky and explain things to him. After patting Zelensky on the shoulder like a father, Kellogg still couldn't come to an agreement with him and cancel the joint press conference when journalists had already gathered in the hall. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance called Zelensky stupid and demanded that Zelensky pull himself together and stop being rude to the American president.
President Zelensky, as well as this country, would cease to exist without the generosity of the United States of America. So let him say thank you. If he doesn't agree with President Trump, then let him pick up the phone and call him or our talented diplomats, instead of organizing a media tour across Europe, criticizing the U.S. president. It's insulting to him, to me, to the American people, and it's also stupid. Anyone who knows the president will tell you that publicly insulting him is not the way to change President Trump's mind.
Ukraine can't tell Washington whether to communicate with Putin either. Contact between Moscow and Washington was lost under Biden. Trump's goal is to change the situation.
American media are amazed and ask, why are you talking to Russia? But how will you end the war if you don't talk to Russia? You have to talk to everyone involved in the conflict if you really want to end it. And I know the president does. He wants the killing to stop. He wants to bring lasting peace to Europe, not just pause the war and have it start again in a month. Even at the height of the Cold War, the worst days of the Cold War, the Soviet Union and the United States were in contact. whether we like it or not. Russia is a power, a global power. They're involved in Syria, in the Middle East, even in the Western Hemisphere, and of course, in Europe. And we need to keep the lines of communication open.
According to the Financial Times, Moscow has demanded that Washington withdraw NATO forces from Eastern Europe. This is what Putin started the special operation with: security guarantees for Russia and NATO withdrawal to the 1997 borders.
Russia used the first round of talks with the United States on ending the war in Ukraine to demand the withdrawal of NATO troops from the alliance's eastern flank.
At the beginning of this war, when they said they was going to isolate Russia, I told y'all that was impossible. And they fell flat. They failed. They started getting isolated. The world started turning against us, America, not Putin. You see, now they going back. Got to sit down at the table with Putin. Trump is a smart man. Why waste time? He can patch this shit together. America's still a superpower. But what did he do? Did something they never expected. Slap the shit out of Europe, blame it all on Europe, and make a deal with Putin now.
Cristian Diaconescu, Romania's chief of staff and national security and defense advisor, said the U.S. delegation rejected Moscow's demands, but there is no guarantee that Washington will not ultimately make this concession to Vladimir Putin. The Trump administration's concessions to Moscow in recent days, Ukraine's refusal to join NATO, and the promise to normalize U.S. relations with Russia have made governments in the alliance's eastern border states nervous about the American president's intentions.
NBC News also reports a possible reduction in the American military contingent in the European Union. Who is to blame for starting the war has yet to be determined. The United States has called on the UN and the G7 to no longer call Russia an aggressor in resolutions. Otherwise, Washington will simply block the vote.
And another question: why are the Americans pushing Zelensky to France? Macron spent an hour today answering questions from his followers on social media about Ukraine and the threat Russia poses to Europe. Emmanuel opened the live broadcast by showing a map of the territories liberated by Russia. According to Macron, Zelensky is legitimate and advocates democracy, since he is a product of democracy. Ukrainian women, who are now standing at the walls of military registration and enlistment offices and begging to at least catch a glimpse of their relatives, would probably be surprised. At the same time, in response to the main question of whether Macron is going to send troops to Ukraine, he remained silent. He said that he has not yet made such a decision, and he did not rule out the possibility of occupying part of Ukraine after Putin's agreement with Trump. And Macron also plans to call on Trump to be tougher with Putin in Washington, where he and British Prime Minister Starmer were called onto the carpet. He says that he will tell Trump to his face that Europe will not allow all of Ukraine to be handed over to Russia. However, if we are to believe MEP Mika Altol, Trump gave Europe exactly 3 weeks to agree on the terms of Ukraine's capitulation. That is, the deadline set by Washington is mid-March. This is indeed a map of Ukraine. Monday will mark 3 years since Russia began its aggressive war in February 2022. It gathered troops on the northern and eastern borders of Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of people, and it entered the neighboring country. And for 3 years now there has been a war in this area, which is colored a little darker pink. The situation is very, very worrying, because Ukraine cannot retake these territories militarily. So our goal is long-term peace.
Why did you lie and say they could?
That is, a peace that will allow Ukraine to be stable, to have recognized international law, a reconstruction plan, and security guarantees. However, I have no desire to sacrifice generations of young Europeans. But I want to be stronger, to be a deterrent, to be even closer in terms of security and defense to avoid war. We need to strengthen the European defense and security framework very much, and that is what we are doing now. I myself am optimistic about President Trump's initiative. Of course, it is still in its early stages, but I think it is important that he has now started this peace initiative with the Russians. But we still need to be sure that any peace agreement must have strong security guarantees. It is clear that we support, and we will continue to support Ukraine. However, it is important that we do everything we can to ensure that those who have supported Ukraine in the past and our transatlantic partners continue to do so. We are prepared, including the UK, to play our part if we reach a point
Well, while the media freaks out about the diplomacy with Russia, our next guest, American academic Gilbert Doctorow, says that having respect for Putin and diplomacy with Russia makes you a great American patriot because you then recognize the power of peace, diplomacy, instead of constant provocation. He's been warning for years about the neocons led by John McCain trying to get a war with Russia. He warned about the Obama administration's provocation with Russia, particularly around the way we covered the Olympics. Now he says the Trump administration is doing the right thing, but may use this advantage to drive a wedge between Russia and China. So we're not done here. Gilbert Doctorow, thank you so much for joining us and coming back to Redacted.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here.
So you live in Europe, so it's late for you. We really appreciate your time. Do you think this diplomacy with Russia is what we've needed all along? And can you explain why you've been warning about this for over a decade?
We're going back to 2015 when I first wrote a book, Does Russia Have a Future? By Mentors of Great Power. And I followed that up a couple of years later, Does America Have a Future? And the reason that these titles were given, and they are linked, is that since about 2010, 2012, the United States has been determined to remove Russia as a major power and as a global competitor, and it has staked its own fortune on that very policy, so that the success or failure in the attack on Russia has had direct implications for America's success as a great power. And we see that today. These things have come together. Every attempt by the American administrations, successive administrations, from Obama on, to handicap Russia, to weaken Russia, have come back and harmed the American position in the world. It has finally taken Donald Trump to have the courage to face these facts and this reality and to begin to normalize relations with Russia in the hope of extracting some kind of global advantage. And I think the global advantage will come in realpolitik, or realistic politics tradition, going back to the conclusion of World War II and what was the Yalta Agreement between the three great powers, the meetings of Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin. This is in the cards, and you'll notice that there were three baskets of things to do that came out of the Riyadh meetings a day ago, and the three baskets were first to restore something approaching normalcy in diplomatic relations, because you cannot proceed to work on the Ukraine war situation, to work on all of the open issues where the United States and Russia can have common interests in a constructive way, if you don't have the manpower, the experts in place, the communications in place. And they were almost severed completely by the Biden administration. So we don't even have ambassadors in place in Moscow or Washington. So that is one basket, to restore normal diplomatic communications for problem solving. The second is a variety of individual identified areas of common interest where there can be constructive US-Russian relations, and including that, resolving the Ukraine war. And then the third basket is precisely what you were suggesting, geopolitics. It was named precisely by the three Americans delegation who gave their press conference following the meeting with the Russians in Riyadh. It was called the geopolitical questions. And that primarily is the relations that Russia has with China, with Iran, with North Korea. And but you'll notice, because there are three baskets, addressing that question of geopolitics and the American wish list to drive a wedge does not prevent progress on the first two parts. The first basket is to be addressed immediately. That's clear. They can't go anywhere without having proper diplomatic services in place. I don't mean consulates, that's very nice, but the embassies themselves are undermanned, and the Russian embassy in Washington is so hamstrung by various limitations, including the fact that their bank accounts aren't operational. They have been cut off from SWIFT. They can't even pay their bills. The Russian embassy in Washington. That is the first thing that will clearly be resolved in the next week or two. Then they move on
Gilbert,
to these issues.
So I was going to ask you, Gilbert, on the European side. So you're hearing a lot of hand-wringing on the European side over the past 24 hours that they're not really being brought to the table. They seem really upset about this. Ursula von der Leyen wanting to push additional sanctions now on Russia, while at the same time, Marco Rubio and the Secretary of State for the United States is wanting to pull back on sanctions against Russia. What do you make of this détente?
Well, if after this succession of amazing developments, starting with President Trump's 90-minute telephone call with Vladimir Putin, there about which we heard very little as content, but the next day we heard a lot about content, or later that day when Pete Hegseth made his debut here in Brussels, speaking to the Ukraine support group or coordinating group, and he delivered the double whammy that Ukraine is not going to restore its pre-war boundaries, and that Ukraine is not going to enter NATO. So that was the first real shock treatment. Then more came towards the weekend. Of course, there was J.D. Vance's speech in the Munich conference, which was set up to underline the division between Europe and the United States, and I'd say to bring out this division in a way that that the whole world can understand. That one is the peace camp, and the other is a war camp. This was done by Vance's discussing why Europe is not democratic, why Europe is its own worst enemy and is defeating its security by this authoritarian Soviet-style censorship, deprivation of freedom of speech, and exclusion of large parts of the population, the populist parties on the right, the populist parties on the left, from equal participation in political life in their countries. That really shook up the leaders, political leaders, military leaders of Europe at the conference, and people who covered it in the newspapers here. I think now of the Le Monde, which had Sylvia Kaufman, who's a well-known personality in British news and in the New York Times op-ed pages, a long-time Le Monde New York bureau chief. She was writing yesterday in Le Monde how the speech by J.D. Vance was fascist and hostile. So you've got the division here, almost irreparable division, has come up, and that served the purposes of Trump. And he went and made the rift still wider, knowing full well what he was doing. When the State Department sent out a questionnaire to all the Europeans saying, well, you're very unhappy that you're not yet participating in the talks. And this was, of course, the big conversation point through all of Europe in this weekend. Shock that the American talks with the Russians did not include either Kiev or, more importantly, themselves. They were not uninvited to this. And all of them know English well enough and American political law well enough to understand the concept that if you don't have a seat at the table, it means you're on the menu. So they understood that they were on the menu.
That's right.
And then this rift was driven by the questionnaire, as I said, a questionnaire which had the intent of saying, look, gentlemen, put up or shut up. You say you want to have a role here. So what are you going to do? What are you going to put up for to enforce a peace agreement that we all will reach and to provide security for Ukraine, which you say is your objective? Of course, here was a great opportunity. Mr. Macron does not let any crisis go without his participating in a solution. And so he rallied Europeans, the key countries, to Paris for a meeting on Monday. And they spent, these were key countries involved in support of Ukraine. Of course, there was zone France, Germany, UK, Spain was there, Italy was there, and a few other odds and ends. But of course, the NATO was represented by Secretary General Rutte, the governing, the highest executive of the European institutions, the European Council is represented by Da Costa, its president. And of course, von der Leyen. Escape, you cannot avoid von der Leyen. She had to show up. Well, after 4 hours of deliberations, it was a failure. They couldn't agree on anything. And I think it was intentional.
I want to ask you about that, actually, because they have to reposition themselves after trailing behind Joe Biden for 4 years. And so the United States, we know Trump is telling the truth that Ukraine started the war first, but really it's our own government. It's the CIA that prompted Ukraine to start attacking those people. So the bad guy behind the bad guy is our own government, the United States intelligence. The Europeans have pretended not to know that and have just promoted this propaganda of Putin's unprovoked aggression. It is the modern day equivalent of weapons of mass destruction. Can European leaders save face now because they're so far up the backside of the old Biden narrative? Forgive me for asking it that way.
Let's be more discriminating here, where you've got the Brits and you've got the continental Europeans. The most aggressive people, far more aggressive than the United States, from the get-go, have been the British. And let's be specific about this. So many events around the development of the Ukraine war, and in particular as regards the terrorist activities by Ukraine, the attacks, various attacks in Russia, scandals that were meant to do harm to the credibility of Mr. Putin, and like the death of Navalny. These are all orchestrated by whom? By the CIA? No, by MI6. Now, we all go back to 2003 and the Iraq War, and it was commonplace to say the special relationship between Britain and the United States meant that Tony Blair was the lapdog of the American President Bush. What's happened since is that lapdog has become the attack dog. The MI6 and the Brits have been out in front. They have been the most aggressive, the most destructive in the war in Ukraine. Who was it, after all, who persuaded Zelensky not to go to sign the already initialed peace agreement with Russia on April 15th, more or less, 2022? It was the visit of Boris Johnson. Now, it's easy to say that he did the bidding of Washington, but I think that is a simplification. The Brits had their own agency, and it was to lead the Americans into this disaster because they knew better. Who had the contacts with Ukrainian agents that enabled the murder of Navalny? It was the MI6. It wasn't the CIA. So who could have been involved in the scandalous Bucha massacre that was used to persuade Europeans to sign on to the American sanctions from hell that Victoria Nuland and her team had prepared? It was the Brits. So let's divide this a bit. Mr. Macron, he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. And he will go this way or that way where he sees the opportunities. But the Brits are stuck. And if I were Mr. Starmer, I would think twice about this trip in the coming week to Washington. because
Right.
now that Zelensky has been denounced by the president as a dictator, I don't know what he thinks he can achieve by visiting the Oval Office.
Going to the Oval Office to campaign on behalf of a dictator who's canceled elections and murdered political opponents and American journalists. Like, I don't think the White House is going to be very forgiving for that, reading the temperature of the room in the United States. Americans are sick of it. I see people right now in our chat room, they're sick of it. They're sick of us propping up this propaganda in Ukraine. Gilbert, we'll get you out of here on this. I know it's 10:30 there in Brussels where you are right now, so we'll let you get back to your evening. Final question here. NATO, big rumors floating around right now maybe not a rumor, in the German newspaper Bild just published saying, and similar to the Financial Times, that the United States is ready to leave NATO and get out of NATO altogether. What do you make of that, and what would that mean for the future of NATO?
Let's use a little bit of Sovietology here and parse the words of Mr. Trump. Just notice what he said in the last day. We will not take all of our troops out of Europe. We will not take all of our. That means it's a lot more than the 20,000 with troops taken out that we heard about 10 days ago. Even the Brits acknowledge, even Starmer acknowledges that they can do nothing in Ukraine without American presence, without the Americans providing the logistics, the satellite intelligence and the rest of it. So as the United States cuts its forces in Europe, Europe is defenseless. And being defenseless, they will have to acknowledge that they are alone against a big Russian neighbor, and they damn well better do something to accommodate themselves to the Russian neighbor, and instead of sending in new sanctions, which cannot be enforced without American backing. That is a situation I cannot see that the present leadership in the European institutions can stay in place. I say Mr. Macron can talk out of both sides of his mouth. I don't think that Ursula von der Leyen or Kaja Kallas have that luxury. I think they're going to be on the street.
On the street.
Wow. All right. That's a prediction. And I had forgotten the case that you made for the British actually killing Alexei Navalny. I refer you to the piece we did with Mr. Doctor recently. Please look that up on Redacted and subscribe to his newsletter because it has a lot of bombshells. This guy, he's a great researcher.
Yeah, our chat room is just saying, wow, what an incredible guest. So thank you, Gilbert. Thank you for standing.
So the NATO enlargement, as you know, started in 1999 with Hungary, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And Russia was extremely unhappy about it. But these were countries still.
You know how you know all of our media outlets are fake and they propaganda stations, because this is Jeffrey Sachs in the European Parliament talking to the European Parliament. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, none of these people won't let this man on their show to explain to the Americans what's really going on. That's disgusting.
Far from the border, and Russia protested, but of course to no avail. Then George Bush Jr. came in. When 9/11 occurred, President Putin pledged all support. And then the U.S. Decided in September 20th, 2001, that it would launch 7 wars in 5 years. And you can listen to General Wesley Clark online talk about that. He was NATO's supreme commander in 1999. He went to the Pentagon on September 20th, 2001. He was handed the paper explaining 7 wars. These, by the way, were Netanyahu's wars.
Now, we all know Netanyahu. I already was talking about that. Netanyahu had the U.S. president like a sock puppet, destroying the Middle East on behalf of Israel, killing all those American soldiers, wasting. And that's where America might went into the Middle East. They was a strong country until then. Now they can't fight nobody and win because you wasted all your manpower, your weaponry, and we waste trillions of dollars in the Middle East. That's a fact. But the disgusting part is we hear these people say Putin's a dictator and he's a gangster. He launches wars of aggression. And hear these people openly talking about they was going to attack 7 nations in 5 years. General Richard Clark. And it's all over. And everybody know it. He's talking to the European Parliament, letting them know how foolish they are to be following behind America when America openly say, hey, we're going to attack 7 nations in 5 years. And have attacked all those nations. The last one on the list is Iran. Everybody else has been toppled and murdered and mayhem. Hitler would love that type of shit.
The idea was partly to clean up old Soviet allies and partly to take out supporters of Hamas and Hezbollah. Because Netanyahu's idea was there will be one state, thank you, only one state. It will be Israel. Israel will control all of the territory. And anyone that objects, we will overthrow. Not we exactly, our friend, the United States. That's U.S. policy until this morning. We don't know whether it will change. Now, the only wrinkle is that maybe the U.S. will own Gaza instead of Israel owning Gaza. But the idea has been around at least for 25 years. It actually goes back to a document called Clean Break that Netanyahu and his American political team put together in 1996 to end the idea of the two-state solution. You can also find it online. So these are projects. These are long-term events. These aren't, is it Clinton? Is it Bush? Is it Obama? That's the boring way to look at American politics, as the day-to-day game. But that's not what American politics is. As you know, Viktor Yanukovych was elected in 2010 on the platform of neutrality. Russia had no territorial interests or designs in Ukraine at all. I know. I was there during these years.
Tell them to their face.
What Russia was negotiating was a 25-year lease to 2042 for Sevastopol Naval Base. That's it. Not for Crimea, not for the Donbass, nothing like that. This idea that Putin reconstructing the Russian Empire, this is childish propaganda. Excuse me. If anyone knows the day-to-day and year-to-year history, this is childish stuff. Childish stuff seems to work better than adult stuff. So no designs at all. The United States decided this man must be overthrown. It's called a regime change operation. There have been about 100 of them by the United States, many in your countries and many all over the world. That's what the CIA does for a living. Okay, please know it. It's a very unusual kind of foreign policy. But in America, if you don't like the other side, you don't negotiate with them, you try to overthrow them. Preferably covertly. If it doesn't work covertly, you do it overtly. You always say it's not our fault. They're the aggressor. They're the other side. They're Hitler. That comes up every 2 or 3 years. Whether it's Saddam Hussein, whether it's Assad, whether it's Putin, that's very convenient. That's the only foreign policy explanation the American people are ever given anywhere. Well, we're facing Munich 1938. Well, we're facing Munich 1938. Can't talk to the other side. They're evil, implacable foes. That's the only model of foreign policy we ever hear from our mass media. And the mass media repeats it entirely because it's completely suborned by the US government. I begged the Ukrainians, and I had a track record with the Ukrainians. I advised the Ukrainians. I'm not anti-Ukrainian, I'm pro-Ukrainian completely. I said, save your lives, save your sovereignty, save your territory, be neutral. Don't listen to the Americans. I repeated to them the famous adage of Henry Kissinger, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal.
That's a fact.
Okay, so let me repeat that for Europe. To be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a
Revolutionary salute to our Queen Shannon G for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, Queen. Salute to you.
friend is fatal. Trump does not want the losing hand. This is why it is more likely than not this war will end, because Trump and President Putin will agree to end the war. If Europe does all its great warmongering, it doesn't matter. The war is ending. So get it out of your system. Please tell your colleagues. It's over. And it's over because Trump doesn't want to carry a loser. That's it. It's not some great morality. He doesn't want to carry a loser. This is a loser. The one that will be saved by the negotiations taking place right now is Ukraine. Second is Europe. Your stock market's rising in recent days by the horrible news of negotiations. I know this has been met with the sheer horror in these chambers, but this is the best news that you could get. Now, I encouraged, they don't listen to me, but I tried to reach out to some of the European leaders. Most don't want to hear anything from me at all. But I said, don't go to Kiev. Go to Moscow. Discuss with your counterparts. Are you kidding? You're Europe. You're 450 million people. You're $20 trillion economy. You should be the main economic trading partner of Russia. It's natural links. By the way, if anyone would like to discuss how the US blew up Nord Stream, I'd be happy to talk about that.
He ain't playing with him in done.
On the Middle East, by the way, the US completely handed over foreign policy to Netanyahu 30 years ago. The Israel lobby dominates American politics. Just have no doubt about it.
All facts.
I could explain for hours how it works. It's very dangerous. I'm hoping that Trump will not destroy his administration and worse, the Palestinian people, because of Netanyahu, who I regard as a war criminal, properly indicted by the ICC, and that needs to be told no more, that there will be a state of Palestine on the borders of the 4th of June, 1967, according to international law, as the only way for peace. It's the only way for Europe to have peace on your borders with the Middle East, is the two-state solution. There is only one obstacle to it, by the way, and that is the veto of the United States in the UN Security Council. So if you want to have some influence, tell the United States.
Revolutionary salute to our Queen Shannon G for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, Queen. Salute to you.
Drop the veto. You are together with 180 countries in the world. The only ones that oppose a Palestinian state are the United States, Israel, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, Papua New Guinea,
Puppet states.
Mr. Malay, and Paraguay. So this is a place where Europe could have a big influence. Europe has gone silent about the JCPOA and Iran. Netanyahu's greatest dream in life is a war between the United States and Iran. He's not given up, and it's not impossible that that would come also. And that's because the U.S. in this regard does not have an independent foreign policy. It is run by Israel. It's tragic. It's amazing, by the way. And it could end. Trump may say that he wants foreign policy back. Maybe. I'm hoping that it's the case. Finally, let me just say with respect to China, China is not an enemy. China is just a success story. That's why it is viewed by the United States as an enemy, because China is a bigger economy than the United States. Russia is not going to invade Europe. This is the fundamental point. It may get up to the Dnieper River. It's not going to invade Europe. But there are real issues. The main issue for Russia was the United States, because Russia, as a major power and the largest nuclear power in the world, was profoundly concerned about U.S. unipolarity from the beginning. Now that this is seemingly, possibly ending, Europe has to open negotiations directly with Russia as well, because the United States will quickly lose interest, and you're going to be living with Russia for the next thousands of years. Okay? So what do you want? You want to make sure that the Baltic states are secure. The best thing for the Baltic states is to stop their Russophobia. This is the most important thing. Estonia has about 25% Russian citizens, or Russian-speaking citizens, ethnic Russians. Latvia, the same. Don't provoke the neighbor. That's all. This is not hard. It really isn't hard. And again, I want to explain my point of view. I have helped these countries, the ones I'm talking about, trying to advise. I'm not their enemy. I'm not Putin's puppet. I'm not Putin's apologist. I worked in Estonia. They gave me, I think it's the second highest civilian honor that a president of Estonia can bestow on a non-national, because I designed their currency system for them in 1992. So I'm giving them advice. Do not stand there, Estonia, and say, we want to break up Russia. Are you kidding? Don't. This is not how to survive in this world. You survive with mutual respect, actually. You survive in negotiation. You survive in discussion. You don't outlaw the Russian language. Not a good idea when 25% of your population has a first language of Russian. It's not right, even if there weren't a giant on the border. It wouldn't be the right thing to do. You'd have it as an official language. You'd have a language of in lower school. You wouldn't antagonize the Russian Orthodox Church. So basically, we need to behave.
Putin finna straighten all this out, man. Russia not putting their military up to all of this type of shit is understood. The little punk ass Baltic nations talking shit, ex-Soviet nations with 1.5 million people population talking tough to Russia. Man, we got cities bigger than that. They want World War III. No, Putin not finna let none of these people, after him and Trump finish this, ain't nobody gonna be talking shit. It's gonna be peace. And if it's not gonna be peace, it's gonna be war. Even that, what? All his killers is ready. They killing. They at the all-time high. I can guarantee you, no, the killers is not going home. They're not going back to the bases until everything is straightened out. All these phonies is put in their place.
Behave like grown-ups.
That's just what he got to do.
And when I constantly say that they're acting like children, Sonia always says to me, that's unfair to children.
Revolutionary salute to our family. Blanche for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is real life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Salute to you.
Because this is worse than children. We have a 6-year-old granddaughter and a 3-year-old grandson.
Totally telling the truth, but they still want to pretend like they better be lucky that Trump is doing this, man, because they absolutely could lose it all. There's no enough phony ass armies can stop Russia right now. Nobody but the U.S. In the U.S., we'll take a devastating, blow. But none of those European nations, man, they can't beat Hamas, right? That's serious business. They can't even beat Hamas. Don't tell them in their life. Say anything to Putin ever again, man. And Trump is absolutely exposing that right now. If you don't like it, then go ahead, fight. Go fight Putin. Putin really waiting on him right now. So, all right, so that's good too. Give me 1 second, y'all. Revolution is real life. Appreciate the love.
Germany is in a massive deindustrialization process. They've lost their biggest energy trading partner, which was Russia. The European Union is now souring the relations, for everybody in Europe, by the way, with China. And now Friedrich Merz says, I'm going to put the final nail by actually throwing the US out of this partnership. I mean, I just don't understand. Hello, my friends. I hope you're all doing well. Today is Saturday, the 22nd of February, and this is my second video update of the day. The main topics of conversation for this episode will be the United States threatening Ukraine to cut it off from Starlink if they don't sign the mineral deal. Then we have a confirmation from the Russian side who says that there will be a second meeting in between the United States and Russia over the next couple of weeks. And then the third article, well, this is a massive outrage from the European Union, from Europe, regarding something that Donald Trump has done. Donald Trump has been a naughty boy, and he has caused a little bit of an upset to the people in Europe. And then lastly, we're going to have a little bit of posturing from Friedrich Merz just before the German elections. He's strong, he's a strong leader. It's time to do something, says Friedrich Merz. So let's begin with the United States. US threatens to cut Ukraine off from Starlink if it rejects mineral agreement, Reuters reports. The sources said US negotiators are pressuring Kiev, demanding access to Ukraine's mineral resources. One of the leverage options being considered is the potential disconnection of the country from Starlink. Quote, Ukraine's continued access to SpaceX-owned Starlink was brought up in discussions between the United States and Ukrainian officials after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky turned down an initial proposal from US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Somebody in the comments...
They just using Trump as the face to do this. U.S. been on the strong arms of Zelensky and them. And you think they wanted to play nice? Hell no. This is really the U.S. They getting gangster with them. You give us whatever you got left. We don't give a damn about what Putin got. This is about what you got left. Whatever you got left, we'll take it. That's what the U.S. tells Zelensky. And we're not playing. So you give us that, or the fighting gonna stop today, because we cut Starlink, no communications. You can't communicate with your soldiers. Russia just gonna defeat y'all all over the place. This is the end of Zelensky. So give us everything you got. We even want your wood. We even taking the forest from you. We want your stones, your pebbles. We taking your sand. Where the beach at? We taking that. We probably can sell some of this sand.
section said this very thing yesterday. What if the United States was to disconnect Ukraine from Starlink? This would have a huge impact on Ukraine's capabilities to conduct military operations with any sort of level of effectiveness. This would be the end. And of course, the United States is playing hardball with Volodymyr Zelensky, basically saying, look, if you don't sign this, then I'm just going to take my hand off, and then you can do whatever you want with the tools you have. We're not going to give you our tools any longer. This is basically the conversation. And if people say, well, no, this is just a fluke, well, apparently it is not. Let me carry on. The issue was raised again on Thursday during meetings between Keith Kellogg, the US Special Ukraine Envoy, and Zelensky. A source reported that Ukraine was told during the meeting that it would face imminent disconnection from the service if it did not sign an agreement on mineral resources. I am inclined to believe this, and I'm going to tell you why. Before Keith Kellogg even traveled to Kiev, there was an article published in Ukrainska Pravda saying that Washington doesn't want the media anywhere near that meeting. And now, looking in retrospect, I think this is why. And that's because important, sensitive matters were about to be discussed. The only reason we are seeing this information leaking, I personally think, is because the green t-shirt is now trying to make Donald Trump look bad. This is why all of a sudden sources are saying this should have stayed in that room, but it didn't. And the only question we need to ask ourselves is why. I personally think is because the green t-shirt is very upset, he feels cornered, and he's trying to fight back. But who knows? It might as well be from the Donald Trump side saying, look, if you don't sign this deal, I'm just going to show to the world the situation you're in. Who knows? Anything is possible at this stage. Point being, it's serious. Now, let's move on to Reuters. Russia-US representatives to meet again within 2 weeks, senior Russian diplomat says. A second meeting between representatives of Russia and the United States is planned for the next 2 weeks, the RIA State News Agency reported on Saturday, citing Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov. Ryabkov said there was principled agreement on both sides to hold consultations to work out the entire block of so-called irritants. Guess who those irritants might be? My money is on the European Union leadership and on Volodymyr Zelensky, but you let me know what you think. Also, the fact that Mr. Ryabkov is calling these people irritants, well, I think it's absolutely brilliant. By calling somebody an irritant, you're basically acknowledging that they don't really have any power over you. They're not really representing a real threat to you. They're just irritating. It's just like a little chihuahua barking very loud to the point where it hurts your ears, but you're not in any real danger. That's really what he's trying to convey there. It's absolutely brilliant. Russian humor and all. Europe fears US will refuse to support tribunal for Putin, the Telegraph reports. European states believe that the refusal of the new US administration to call Russia an aggressor may signal their withdrawal from the group of countries preparing a special tribunal for the crime of Russian aggression against Ukraine. A diplomatic note viewed by the Telegraph shows that European officials were shocked by US statements at a number of international meetings that Russia should be invited back into the civilized world. The hubris of these people knows no limits. They actually believe, they are convinced that they hold the monopoly on the civilized world. Look, if the West welcomes you and takes you under their wing, that means you're in the civilized world. If not, well, you're in the not so civilized world. You know, the jungle and the garden. But this also points to something very dangerous, which we see happening every day, by the way. These people are fully immersed into the idea that they hold a monopoly on the truth and on the strength. They legitimately think that they can decide who wins, who loses, who's right, who's wrong. And this will lead to a massive overestimation of their capabilities and their power and their strength. And this is why we see stupid, irrational decisions being made every single day. This is how Germany is getting deindustrialized, all under the banner of we are getting stronger. How exactly are you getting stronger? And all of it stems from this mindset. This is the mindset that's the root cause of everything. The position has called into question preparations for the group's final meeting in March. Quote, unless they, the United States, acknowledge it's an aggression, they can't participate. So are you going to kick the United States out from the civilized world as well? I mean, that's the direction we seem to be heading towards. And they still push ahead with this special tribunal for Russia. Nobody cares. Nobody in the world cares about that tribunal. The Russians don't care. The Americans don't care. Nobody takes it seriously. Why spend billions, tens of billions on organizing these shams? I just don't see the point. Let's carry on. Another called the scenario of the US withdrawal from the core group quite a drastic shift, rewriting history and pretending that Russia wasn't the one who started this war is something that we simply cannot and will not agree to, he added. The Telegraph notes that the European capitals are currently holding talks on the possible collapse of the special tribunal if the United States withdraws from it. Why collapse the tribunal if you think you have the legitimacy to organize such a thing and the strength to enforce it? But of course, that's not the case. And also, Donald Trump despises weakness more than anything else, probably. And what these people are doing, they're all posturing. We are strong. We are organizing tribunals. We are doing this. We are deciding the fate of the world. However, at the first sign that the United States might not go along with their craziness, well, the tribunal is in danger. Why? You're supposed to be strong. You're supposed to be the civilized world. Act like it. Act with strength. But that strength goes away the minute the United States goes away. That's the problem. Many people have said, many people in the US government have said that they are sick and tired of certain Europeans going around the world threatening certain countries with the United States' army. This is the problem. And this is a perfect example of that, just not with the military, but with the political influence of the United States. Let's move on to Mr. Merz. German Chancellor candidate Merz compares Trump's statements on Ukraine to what Putin has been saying for years. Merz described Trump's words as a classic case of switching the perpetrator with the victim. Quote, "This is the Russian narrative. This is how Putin has framed it for years, and honestly, I am shocked that Donald Trump has now apparently adopted it himself." So Mr. Merz has learned nothing from the green t-shirts mistake. The green t-shirt a few days ago basically called Donald Trump a Russian puppet because he said, well, Donald Trump lives in the Russian disinformation space. To quote him exactly, Mr. Merz is basically taking it to next level, saying that, look, he's repeating what Putin has said. He's repeating Russian propaganda. Where does Mr. Merz think he's going with this? Well, let's find out. Merz stressed the importance of Europeans agreeing on a joint strategy to address the issue very, very quickly. Merz believes that pleading for a seat at the negotiating table is the wrong approach. Quote, "Now we must create our own weight," he concluded. Mr. Merz, if you haven't created your own weight over the last 3 years, you're surely not going to create it over the next 3 weeks or 3 months. It's just not going to happen, and that's a fact, by the way. Also, why does Mr. Merz think that this is the smart decision? To position himself right across from Donald Trump. Germany is in a massive deindustrialization process. They've lost their biggest energy trading partner, which was Russia. The European Union is now souring the relations, for everybody in Europe, by the way, with China. And now Friedrich Merz says, I'm going to put the final nail by actually throwing the U.S. out of this partnership. I mean,
it's over for these people, man. Never forget they got kicked out of Africa. It's over for the Europeans. They're going back to the Stone Ages unless they repent for their sins, man. That's just a goddamn fact, man. It's over for them. No more free rides in Africa. Putin done weaponized them African nations. You ain't getting nothing for free over there. They can't fight no more. I told y'all that. That's why they had to leave Africa. Because they militarily not strong enough to really do nothing but fund terrorists. We're going to be looking at some of that later on, how they got busted in Nigeria, funding El Shabaab.
All right, the next question is from The Real AF, and it says the following, quote, "Hi, Glenn. It's fascinating to watch the success of Doge, what's being exposed with U.S. aid, etc., and two of Trump's most controversial picks, Tulsi and RFK, being confirmed. It does seem like we're headed for some sort of renaissance or course correction long overdue. I'm curious about your take on Chris Hedges' recent remarks about the empire self-destructing, which is the alternate way of viewing these events. Here is his first paragraph, quote, "The billionaires, Christian fascists, grifters, psychopaths, imbeciles, narcissists, and deviants who have seized control of Congress, the White House, and the courts are cannibalizing the machinery of the state. These are self-inflicted wounds characteristic of all late empires, which will cripple and destroy the tentacles of power. And then, like a house of cards, the empire will collapse." I do, without all of that invective that he put there, and I'm not sure why that's there, just leaving that question to the side for the moment, I do think that a lot of what's happening is through necessity. The reality is that this American empire is unsustainable. I'm not somebody who thinks the minute the United States government has a deficit or even debt, that's kind of apocalyptic. It is not the same, and I've never accepted the analogy that just like a family has to balance their budget, so too do governments. Governments can use debt financing and have for lots of different reasons, but that doesn't mean there aren't limits on them. And if you look at the debt of the United States and what is required to be serviced, just the interest payments alone, and then you lay on top of that the trillions and trillions of dollars that we've spent on foreign wars all over the place, it is obvious that that needs to be reined in. Even if you're morally supportive of it, even if you think it's strategically advantageous, it's simply not sustainable. The United States cannot continue to sustain the level of debt that it has and the policies that generate that. So I think a lot of what Trump is reacting to and a lot of what Elon Musk is doing is almost an inevitable recognition that there has to be a radical course correction. But at the same time, I think it's an important course correction. I do not think that American empire has been good for the world. And often the argument is, well, even if it wasn't good for the world, the alternatives would be worse. We don't have to live under a single superpower or a single empire. In fact, most of world history has not been a unipolar world. There is a benefit from balancing powers. And yes, that was tried in the 18th and 19th century, and it often produced wars, this idea that we were going to have a balance of powers and no one would be dominant. But it just simply is the fact that if you look at how many wars the United States has started, how many of the wars the United States has fueled, how many of the wars the United States has fought, how many of the proxy wars the United States fuels, so much of the world's violence emanates from the United States. And there have been empires in the past that would use wars to use it as conquest, take land, take assets, and for a while that can be fed, but ultimately even those empires collapse because it just becomes so sprawling and so unmanageable. And so I think that part of what is happening is this late stage empire that Trump is reacting to, and the recognition that most people in Washington have, but have been unwilling or afraid to express, that this cannot be sustained for much longer, that this needs to all be reined in. But I also think in the case of Trump, there is a real ideological conviction that most of what the United States does in the world when it comes to interfering in foreign countries, trying to control foreign countries, trying to start wars, is very bad for the United States, very bad for American citizens. I believe there's an ideological conviction there. And if you're on the left and you believe that that impulse comes from a more paleo-conservative or right-wing or isolationist impulse, maybe you can find it disturbing, even if you think a left-wing version of that would be good. I guess if you're really intent on not just demanding radical change, but demanding it in exactly the way that you want it, based on the exact premises that you want it. I don't really have that demand. I want to see the National Endowment for Democracy defunded and shut down. I want to see the CIA and the NSA and the FBI severely limited in the role that they play in the world. I want to see U.S. foreign policy far more oriented toward getting along with other countries rather than dominating them and manipulating them and exploiting them. I want to see the military-industrial complex radically reduced so that it doesn't have an incentive as its only profit and power mechanism to constantly start and fuel wars. And whether this comes from this kind of an ideological perspective or that, is far less important to me than the fact that it happened. And so when I see it happening, I'm going to be encouraged by it. I'm going to applaud it. I don't have a need to call the people doing it deviants or psychopaths or whatever. In fact, the first thing that we saw from Donald Trump was the imposition of a ceasefire that ended, at least for some time, the single worst expression of state violence I've seen in my lifetime, which is the absolutely nauseating, complete destruction of the society of Gaza and the lives of 2.2 million people by Israel, funded by the United States. That came to an end because of Donald Trump. You want to call people psychopaths and deviants and monsters, call the people who funded those things, which are the Democrats and the Biden administration. And certainly they didn't have opposition from the Republicans, but they were still the ones who did it and who stood up every day and defended it and financed it. And to me, the way that you judge a person is by the outcomes they produce. And so far, the primary outcome that Donald Trump has produced has been that ceasefire in Gaza, along with a serious attempt to end the war in Ukraine, what has put the United States on a path to clearly resolving that war sooner rather than later. And then at the same time, expressing a worldview that I think is very healthy and long overdue about the way in which the United States has tried to bully the world. Elon Musk said that the United States has been bullying the world, has been interfering in other countries, and we should start minding our own business. So whatever you think of the people who are doing it, and whatever you think of their motives, or whatever you think of the impulses that are driving it, seeing these things being done and hearing these things being said are things that I regard as extremely positive. And all along, from the very beginning, when I was far less negative about Trump and the emergence of Trump and the Trump movement than most people were who had been associated with the left, the reason for that is that I could hear and see this realignment. And so could neocons. Neocons left the Trump movement, were petrified. It did everything to sabotage it because they understood what I understood as well, which is that their project was endangered by a Trump-led Republican Party. And it was for exactly that reason, the reason that neocons hated him, that I found potential value in Trump and in the Trump movement and in the realignment that he could usher in, knowing that the Democratic Party would never deliver any of those things, that reforming the Democratic Party or trying to work within it or whatever was a fool's game. That was something I believed for a while and then saw the futility of it for so many reasons. And then with the emergence of Trump, it got even worse because they became defenders of establishment dogma and the institutions of authority. And so all the things that made the Democratic Party irrevocably rotted intensified a great deal. And I think you're seeing the wisdom of that view being vindicated in just the first weeks of the Trump administration.
Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.
The big news is this week that Donald Trump looks like he's making peace with Russia and putting an end to the Ukraine proxy war that has cost U.S. taxpayers well over $100 billion and cost Ukraine its future and hundreds of thousands of people. And it looks like Trump is bucking the establishment, the bipartisan establishment, and putting this to an end. So how are Democrats, the ones who have been pushing this policy of using Ukraine for a proxy war against Russia, who were behind the 2014 Maidan coup that triggered this conflict that has ensued ever since, how are they handling Trump's embrace of peace and diplomacy? Well, let's check in. This is Senator...
What problem? Do you believe...
This is Senator Ruben Galeo speaking to MSNBC. Ruben Gallego, excuse me.
Yes, but what follow-up? Do you believe that Vladimir Putin will stop at Ukraine? If the Americans, if Donald Trump gives Vladimir Putin what he would like, allows him to keep the territory that he has stolen, essentially, from the Ukrainian people, will he stop there?
The history of Russia, whether it's communist Russia, Tsarist Russia, or whatever the heck Putin is always to expand, always to try to get more and more and try to conquer more and more, especially anything that they consider their former territory. But, you know, Russia is a weak country. And for some reason, this president is just enamored with the idea of
Russia is a weak country. Imagine that. The nonsense he sit up there spewing. Russia is weak.
Russia being the strong country. Russia historically has lost almost all of their wars, especially all the wars of expansion.
Russia historically has almost lost all of their wars. What? This dude used to be in the military, but they pay this man to come on TV and spew the bullshit that Russia historically has lost almost all of its wars. Russia beat 70% of the Nazi army by themselves. You know, Russia, that same army that defeated the great Napoleon, Russia's also the army that put an end to NATO's bullshit in Ukraine. Why are you talking about Russia's weak? This is nonsense.
And we need to give and empower Ukraine the ability for them to actually absolutely destroy Russia. Because destroying Russia means that the rest
give Ukraine the ability and the power to be able to destroy Russia. What? You already tried that. You almost got the whole world blew up. You already tried that. You gave it the best you can. See, this is the nonsense. Some Americans actually watch this and they believe Russia is weak. And if we just keep giving them a little bit more, it's a scam. He getting paid. But to say Russia has lost all of its wars, this is just crazy, bro.
The rest of Western Europe is
the United
secure
States
too.
saying that?
Yes, but
So there we go. Senator Ruben Gallego, he wants us to destroy Russia.
Isn't NATO enough protection for NATO? I thought the purpose of NATO was if you attack NATO, then NATO will come to the rescue. Not that you have to defend countries that are not in NATO, because God forbid they could next attack NATO.
Yeah, and like, you know, he's forgetting that, yeah, listen, the Soviet Union lost a lot of people in the Second World War, but they also helped defeat the Nazis. And is he upset that Russia didn't lose that
I'm sure
war?
he thinks they are the Nazis.
Yeah, well,
Most of these people think that.
They do.
They just throw Hitler around and you're like, wow, you don't know any history.
Even as they're, of course, arming the actual Nazis inside Ukraine, who openly wear Nazi insignia and celebrate Hitler's birthday. Yeah.
I don't want to ever hear about Nazis here ever again after you gave, and by the way, it's probably about 300 billion, because I thought Zelensky, well, how much did he admit to losing? That they just don't know where it is?
Well, he said it was about 150 billion, and he said he didn't know where half of it went. So by his account, it's about 75 billion that's missing. But I agree with you.
Go ahead and double it. Carlito's Way rules. You just double it, you know? How much is Sasso missing from the club? You just double it for his gambling.
Here is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
You know, he's flagrantly lying. And the worst thing is that not just that a president of the United States is lying about something where he's obviously lying, but that his lies track perfectly with the talking points of Vladimir Putin.
Oh, no.
So if you go back to, remember Trump Russia? The Mueller report said there was Trump Russia. Bipartisan Senate intelligence report said there was Trump.
What? I'm sorry, what did the Mueller report say?
The Mueller report said there was Trump Russia. You notice how he's not saying Trump Russia collusion? That was the key word that they said every single day, nonstop, for more than 2 years.
Well, your brain should be filling it in now.
Exactly. So, but he can't say collusion anymore because he knows that actually there was no collusion.
It's
now
like crossing state lines. The same difference, you know? He crossed state lines, and you're like, what? Is that a crime? What do you mean? And when Mueller report came out, it was nothing, right? And then they had to go, well, it didn't exonerate Trump.
That was the best they could do. He's not exonerated.
Right.
And even there, that was not exonerated for obstruction, for obstructing the probe into the conspiracy theory that he was a Russian asset. So yes, he was not exonerated on that according to Mueller, but that was a useless, and that was a term with no legal meaning. Like either you're guilty or you're not. It's not about whether you're exonerated. And that was about obstruction, not about the core issue, which now he wants to forget, which is collusion with Russia.
I only say collusion theory from now. I don't say conspiracy theories. I believe in collusion theories.
Russia, repeated trials brought in evidence showing there was Trump Russia. There was, is, and ever shall be Trump Russia. This is Trump Russia rearing its ugly head again.
What is that?
And I think a lot of my colleagues on the Republican side are going to be pushing back hard behind the scenes on the White House in the days ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure the Republicans are going to be motivated to push back on Trump if you keep claiming that Trump Russia is a thing.
Why did he say that 3 times? He goes, Trump Russia, Trump Russia, Trump Russia. Like, is that a phrase that that's supposed to be sticky, as they say?
Because again, they can't say collusion anymore. So they just want you to associate in your mind Trump Russia and think about collusion without them having to say it. Because they know when they say it out loud, it sounds like they're insane, because they are. Because this was their dominant conspiracy theory for more than 2 years.
All I'm thinking of is him as that guy Tim from that fashion reality show. He looks just like him. There's a lot of Sturman drawing in here. He seems like that.
They don't want no peace. They
People
want all
colored glasses frames. You can't trust them. I don't know what it is. But you tell me someone trustworthy with colored glasses frames.
Fair enough. Okay, let's go to Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut.
Yeah, there's no separation between the Kremlin and the White House right now. The White House
not
is
even
a
the ocean?
full-time Kremlin propaganda operation. The way in which they have blamed Ukraine for starting the war, blaming the continuation of the war on Zelensky, calling him a dictator. This is music to the ears of Russia, who I think knows that it is probably months away from being able to own and control most and eventually all of Ukraine. It's a devastating moment.
You thought you was gonna own it, huh? These little shiesty bastards. What, you thought you was gonna own it, didn't you? Nah, Trump, Putin is so happy. What business of it is yours, bro? What business of it is yours? What's going on in Ukraine? This is what's wrong with U.S. Trump, right? It's a big ocean between us. He was putting it back in their place. It ain't our business what's going on over there. That is the fact. These little greedy Zionists right here, he can't believe it. He want his good Khazarian empire to be recreated. That ain't gonna happen.
The free world, and I just think that the White House are fools if they believe that Putin will stop there. He is going to see a green light to continue to use force to expand Russia's borders, and eventually, I think there's a real probability that American troops are going to have to fight abroad to protect the global world order. Perhaps American sovereignty.
Fight who? Fight who? Fight who? Hey, little pencil neck weasel. Who the hell you think you're talking to? American troops gonna go fight. Fight who? We know you're not talking about the Russians. Boy, your ass gonna get us killed. See, America's gonna have to go fight for the resources and the minerals, huh? You're gonna die trying to take that stuff from Russia, bro. It's over. It's over. And you can't send no troops nowhere. You little warmongering punk.
So we couldn't hear the last. Let me play the last 5 seconds because it's so ridiculous.
Abroad to protect the global world order and our allies, and perhaps American sovereignty itself.
So global world order. They always gotta slip that in.
I long for the days where you used to get challenge people like this to a duel. It's plenty of Congress people that got smoked talking like that, bro. Back in the day, we was in bondage, but hell, a man like that. They'll challenge that man to a duel. Man, you is dishonoring America talking like that, man. I'll challenge you to a duel, man. You need to pick a weapon. Look it up. Plenty of Congress. I think a president even died in a duel. Dangerous business, man. You know, this cat right here, boy, you won't make us go back to the good old days of challenging these suckers, lying like that about the U.S. Army. You go to war for your goddamn self.
The Alex Jones phrase, which Alex Jones did not invent. I remember George H.W. talk about the New World Order. And then they go the post-World War II order. And then the rules-based post-World War II order. The same crap every time.
It's just so pathetic. This is all they have. They've spent all this money. They've funneled all this weaponry into Ukraine. What do they have to show for it? Russia has taken about 20% of Ukraine's territory. By the way, which debunks his claim that if we stop this war, Putin's going to go on to some other country, because it's taken Russia 3 years to take just 20% of Ukraine, which is right on its border. And now we expect them to go around and just, okay, let's go invade somebody else now that we've done this.
Well, that's what we would do.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And this idea that if we don't.
First of all, Putin ain't trying to take nothing out. He wanted to speed it up. More Russians would die, but he definitely could speed the pace up a little bit. Them phony-ass countries in Europe should be afraid. I can no longer say what Putin not going to do. I don't know who next. I don't know who is next, because they still talking shit. And Putin been warning them politicians in the U.S. He warned them that he will hit the decision-making centers if they stick their nose in the business, man. Trump trying to bring peace. And all these clowns instead of talking about war, they don't want to fight. These people lost to the Taliban, man. Let's just get real. Let's just get real for a second.
Sacrificing young Ukrainians, lower class Ukrainians, by the way, because wealthier people can bribe their way out of conscription and being kidnapped into conscription. Then we're gonna have to send U.S. troops over there. It's so desperate and pathetic. And the cost, as always, is borne by Ukrainians.
What's the average? Okay, because it was like a year ago we were reporting on this. The average age of the infantry was like 50. The last time I checked, what are they now?
It was up there. It was in the 40s. Yeah, it was in the 40s. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why the U.S. recently pressured Ukraine to lower their conscription age to 18 from 25, which Ukraine had already lowered under U.S. orders. It was previously 27.
That's disgusting too.
So 27 to 25.
And then off the male population in Ukraine. What you think gonna happen to the women? What you think gonna happen to those women, man? Europe and the sex traffickers and like Hunter Biden them getting their hands on them Ukrainian women. That's why you get your mail order bribes. Remember, a lot of those bribes was coming. A lot of those European mail order bribes, like Trump old lady, but she not from there. She from Slovenia. I don't know where she is. She from around there somewhere, but not from Ukraine. That is because after the ex-Soviet Union, them women, husbands and stuff was fucked up, died, drunks, all that. So they, sold themselves for citizenship and things of that nature. That is also what's going to happen to Ukraine. All these men done died. What the hell you think these women going to do? Come on, man.
And the Trump administration initially were telling Zelensky to lower it to 18, which for the first time he actually resisted the U.S. and didn't obey their order, thankfully, sparing the lives of these young people. But still, he's sacrificing hundreds of thousands of his own people for what? For what? So Russia can continue to take more territory. And that's what Chris Murphy continues to want to do. And let's do a flashback. Chris Murphy has been involved in this Ukraine proxy war project from the start. Back in 2014, when there was a coup in which the U.S. backed the overthrow of a government that was pledging neutrality, aka not to join NATO. Right. So that's why the U.S. backed his overthrow. Chris Murphy was there on the ground, and he openly took credit for regime change. This is back from February 2014.
I will admit to you that I have not been involved in what's happening in Venezuela over the last week, because I've been focused as the chairman of the Europe subcommittee on Ukraine. But with respect to Ukraine, we have not sat on the sidelines. We have been very much involved. Members of the Senate who have been there, members of the State Department who have been on the square. The administration, the Obama administration, passed sanctions. The Senate was prepared to pass its own set of sanctions. And as I said, I really think that the clear position of the United States has in part been what has helped lead to this change in regime. So I know that there is merit in the claim that the United States sort of has these principles and then we selectively apply them. We get involved in certain places and then we don't get involved in other places. But I think if ultimately this is a peaceful transition to a new government in Ukraine, it'll be the United States on the streets of Ukraine who will be seen as a great friend in helping make that transition happen.
Buddy is from McLean, Virginia. So you hear that? He's openly taking credit for regime change, which set off this entire thing.
Well, it sounded like he was answering a question. I don't know what the question that was asked, but were they like, why weren't you doing enough regime change in Venezuela? It sounded like he was like, well, we were
busy in Ukraine.
Yeah,
I can't do regime change in two places.
We'd love to be doing regime change everywhere, but I can only do what I can do.
Yeah. I'm swamped. Okay, I'm swamped. I'm really busy right now. Yeah,
no, it's great. They all took credit for it, and then they just say the things, and then you're supposed to forget they said it, and then they'll be like, I never said that. And you play a video of them saying that. That's cherry picked.
All right, so listen, we're hearing a somber mood right now from congressional Democrats. It's not a good time for them. The possibility of peace in Ukraine, rather than
people hate peace.
It's
That's
tough.
crazy.
So we need some optimism. We need someone to rally us, to lift our spirits. So who better to rally us than the Blue Anon shaman herself, the queen of Russiagate, Rachel Maddow.
Oh, good.
The political reality of this administration is going to be shaped by whether or not the people who oppose him strongly enough and effectively enough. The political reality of this administration and this presidency will be determined by also by whether the people who voted for him are horrified enough by what they have wrought that they regret it and are willing to act differently and to speak out about their regret. The
what haveth I wrought?
Peace in Ukraine. What have I done? What have I done? Who am I?
Remember they had that with George W. Bush, where it'd be like, "Miss me," like right when Obama. I'm waiting for those of Biden.
The reality of this presidency and this administration will be determined in some part by whether
people need to ask them, how is it two Hitlers? How is Putin and Trump both Hitler? That's the real question I want them to answer. You told me Putin was Hitler, and then we heard Trump was Hitler. How is it twin Hitlers? Hitler meeting themselves? What is Hitler doing sitting down with Hitler talking peace? See, these people are out of their fucking mind. I thought Hitler wanted war. Why the hell is these two Hitlers sitting down trying to negotiate peace while the people who are against Hitler is screaming for more war? Do you pay attention? Hitler, Putin, Hitler, Trump, they talking peace. And then the anti-Hitlers, the media, and the Democratic Party, they want war. That's crazy.
Whether or not Republican officials realize that their own survival as politicians depends not on sucking up to Trump, but by helping their constituents survive him.
Oh, boy.
Strong evidence.
Their constituents, who might those be? That is very ominous.
Weapons contractors, I think she's talking about, because they stand to lose a lot of money by this proxy war being shut down.
Yeah, the lizard people. She means the lizard people.
Supporting all of those strikes against Trump so far, frankly.
Was Hitler? Maduro in Venezuela was Hitler? Saul was Hitler? What the fuck? It's a bunch of Hitlers running around. Are you telling me all of the Hitlers are teaming up to form one big super Nazi Hitler type organization? Is that what we're hearing here? These people out of their goddamn mind, and the gig is up. The gig is up because the whole time these people been supporting the Nazis. The real Hitler, they're supporting.
But this is one other thing to watch. If we really are now abandoning the free world and lining up instead with the world's dictatorships, and Trump is unwilling.
Dictators.
Breaking news, Kurt. We're aligning with dictatorships for the first time. We're abandoning the free world.
China has freer speech than all of Europe. Just so everybody knows, the bad season. I went there. You could literally talk about absolutely anything. They were like, to whatever you want, just don't talk about the Chinese government. And I didn't know anything about it, so that was like fine. In Germany, you can't. I can't even believe what they're doing. I don't even know what the race is.
Do you know it's only one absolute dictator, one absolute monarch in the world? It's not even Kim Jong-un. It's not Kim Jong. The one absolute monarch in the world who doesn't answer to nobody, everybody kneels to him, is the fucking king of Saudi Arabia. Well, right now, the crown prince, his son. But that is the only, see, they never say that. You're talking about dictator. The king of Saudi Arabia is a fucking dictator. That's serious business. You still get your head chopped off daily. They chopping heads daily. Nobody, if you ever disrespect the king, you die. And they cozy up to Saudi Arabia, but they call everybody else a fucking dictator. Say Trump, he's cozying up to dictator. You are allies with the real dictatorship, the House of Saud. These people they hypocrites.
This cartoon the person spread because they won't show you what they even did. So kick their door in and take all their stuff.
In Canada right now, my friend Eve Engler, who I grew up with, he is spending the weekend in jail because he criticized a Israel supporter on social media, called her a genocide supporter and a fascist. And so he was told he was going to be charged with harassment. And then when he announced that on Twitter, the Montreal police added a new charge, which is that he was inciting against the Montreal police. So he's spending the weekend in prison for criticizing an Israel supporter and then announcing that he was going to be charged with criticizing that Israel supporter. That's the state of free speech right now and freedom in the free world.
how does foreign aid become covert action?
You know, it happened. I think it really happened sometime during the Bill Clinton administration, and then it extended under George W. Bush. Because, you know, I remember, you know, when I worked covert action on the Afghanistan project, the Afghanistan task force, and was specifically involved with placing articles and information in magazines, newspapers, creating videotapes. There was never any thought or comment about using anything like USAID or National Endowment for Democracy. But it's clear that clearly by the late 1990s into the 2000s, they'd figured that out, that there was a way that the United States intelligence community could use those organizations as a way to provoke and promote color revolutions. And it really became widespread, starting with the Arab Spring and then extending into the Maidan in Ukraine. And you notice that in those intervening years there was no growth in USAID's budget from 1990 to 2000. It started growing under George W. Bush. It doubled under Barack Obama compared to 2000. And then it just exploded when Donald Trump was president. And I don't think Trump actually realized what was going on.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on the latter part. Ray, Alistair Crook tells me amongst MI6, it is very well known that USAID, he used the word front. I'll let you choose whatever word you want, is a front for the CIA. Is this well known in the U.S. intelligence community? Do your former colleagues know that USAID was either a front or a funding mechanism for the Central Intelligence Agency?
You know, everyone knows, Judge, it's even been in the press, a slice of the CIA called the Covert Action Staff was transferred to the National Endowment for Democracy under Bill Casey because Bill was a little too flagrant in mining harbors in Nicaragua and doing all kinds of crazy things. They said, CIA shouldn't be doing that. We'll let a nonprofit, National Endowment for Democracy, do that. So that's what the staff went along. A lot of them went along to work for the NED. Now you needed some way to fund that. And then, of course, that's where USAID comes in.
Well,
Real simple.
Were they analysts or were they operations people?
No, they're operations people, but they worked on this whole business of color revolutions and all that kind of thing. We have Victoria Nuland herself saying in December of 2021 that $5 billion went to satisfy Ukraine's aspirations to join the West. Now, where'd the money come from? Well, CIA is rolling in money, but $5 billion is a lot. So you need a conduit. And that's what USAID was or is.
Larry, do you think that Congress knows that USAID was giving all this cash to the CIA? Cash.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Some of them do because they were getting paid in return. You got members of Congress who right now under this $48 billion that has been traced to the Caribbean. Part of that money was going back to members of the Congress, both senators and House of Representatives.
You mean in donations to their campaign or in corrupt cash in their pockets?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
All of the above. Go check out. Just let me give you a quick example. Check out Lindsey Graham's net worth when he first went into Congress. It was $800,000. His net worth right now is estimated between $42 and $82 million.
Well, how could that possibly be unless he's an investment genius?
Well, he ain't that, that's for sure. So, but he's not the only one. I mean, significant members of Congress, and Nancy Pelosi is a prime example. Mitch McConnell's another example. I mean, the corruption on this is enormous. And so I guarantee you, any member of Congress that's out shilling, like in the case of Ukraine, we got to have more money for Ukraine. They've been on the take. I'd bet dollars to donuts on it.
Ray, does the intelligence community regularly bribe members of Congress? I know they give them information in secret and they're told it's a crime if they reveal it, but do they actually give them cash?
Well, the CIA doesn't know. The arms manufacturers and the people that profiteer from these kinds of transactions, including USAID transactions, that's the conduit. Now, I need to kind of put a little pause on this and to say that when John Kennedy created AID, they did wonderful work. They lifted people out of poverty. They're still feeding people. I don't know whether it's 50% or 40% of this money appropriated for USAID goes to color revolutions, but I do know that cutting the whole shebang out deprives a lot of people of an existence overseas.
Wow. All right, let's get to Israel and Ukraine. Larry, you have written about this. Bombs in empty buses in a Tel Aviv suburb. Nasrallah's funeral Sunday with a large number of foreign Arabs there. Dead Israeli babies returned under most unpleasant circumstances without the dead mother among them, although the mother has supposedly been found, her body, and is going to be returned soon. Do you see a recipe for the IDF returning to Gaza and resuming its genocide?
Well, they're trying to work up that excuse, definitely. But follow the sequence of events. So the bodies of the mother, or they thought it was the body of the mother. Turns out it was not her genetically, and her two children, along with a 80-year-old deceased gentleman. Those were returned yesterday, and it got a lot of play in the Israeli press. All of a sudden, they're telling this story that this is further proof that Hamas is a vicious group, that they killed these children. Well, there's the video that was out there several months ago of the father of the children, while he was still a hostage, weeping and blaming Netanyahu because it was bombing by the Israeli Air Force that killed them. And at the time, Hamas offered to return the bodies. Israel refused. That was some months ago. Now this comes out, and there is starting some of the public reaction to that. Well, lo and behold, all of a sudden, man, terrorist attack. Those were the headlines. Oh, Hamas, the Palestinians have blown up buses. And I thought, oh my God, what did they? How many people they killed? Well, none, because they were empty parked buses. And all I could see in my mind when I was hearing this was that movie with Steve Martin, The Jerk, where he's at a gas station attendant, and some guy's trying to kill him. They keep shooting oil cans, and Martin goes, "They hate the cans. Stay away from the cans." So now this is, we're led to believe that these Palestinian terrorists.
Who put the bombs in the buses? Israelis? It's
yeah. My guess is Mossad.
It's a false flag, isn't it?
My guess is Mossad. The Mossad did it, and on top of it, because they're trying to create this, divert public attention both away from the bodies, blame the Palestinians for murdering these children, which the Palestinians did not, as well as on the upcoming funeral of Nasrallah on Sunday. I mean, our friend and colleague Pepe Escobar is there already. It's not just Arabs. It's not just Muslims showing up. It's other dignitaries from around the world. This can be a big deal. And that's a punch in the nose to Israel as well. They had pretended, hey, we wipe out Nasrallah, we weaken Hezbollah, they're done. Hey, they're back. And you're going to see tens of thousands of Hamas fighters marching in the procession.
If Netanyahu is determined, Ray, to restart the war, and it appears that he still needs the war to stay in power, will or can Trump restrain him? I think Trump genuinely wants peace, but I don't know if he has the willpower to restrain Netanyahu. What is your view? What is the intelligence?
You asked me, will he or can he? The answer to the latter, he can. Will he? That's really an open question. Some people think that Trump is so devoted or so identified with the ceasefire that he will look askance at Netanyahu and say, bad boy, no more arms. If Netanyahu does what I think he'll do and just proceed apace and clean out to the extent he can the rest of Gaza. I don't look at it that way. The only thing that gives me some extra pause is that Netanyahu may be looking at what's going on in Ukraine right now and say, oh my God, this is an unpredictable guy. What's he going to do now? Now, most people with that hypothesis say, well, he'll probably trim his sails and be cautious. I think it's just the opposite. He'll strike while the iron is hot. So I'm convinced that he'll go ahead, and I'm thinking that although Trump can restrain him, he won't. He's so tied with Netanyahu that he'll accept whatever loss of face he gets from Netanyahu violating the ceasefire, and he'll have to accept it. And it doesn't really matter to him because he doesn't much care about people being killed. The term for that, I think, is sociopath.
Is it Netanyahu to whom Trump is tied, Larry, or is it the donor class in America, Mrs. Adelson and company, to whom Trump is tied?
Well, actually, I got a slightly different take on this.
Okay, let's hear
it. The donor class really has no pressure over Trump right now. Why? He's not up for a re-election. They can't. What are they going to do? If you don't do what we say, we're not giving you any more money.
He doesn't need the money.
He's a billionaire. He doesn't need their damn money. And he doesn't need their money for an election campaign. So actually, Trump's got some freedom now. And, Alistair has written some terrific pieces this week detailing the kind of real trouble that Netanyahu is in internally with, members of his office have been taking money from the Qataris. There's some corruption allegations. Shin Bet's going after him.
And Netanyahu wants to fire the head of Shin Bet in order to reduce the effectiveness of the investigation of its own staff.
Yeah. So, if this was pre-election, of November 2024, you could make I think a pretty good case that the Israeli lobby's got some hooks into Trump. Not now. He does not need their money. What Trump is looking at is he wants to have a reputation that goes down in history as a peacemaker. And is he going to surrender himself to Netanyahu and lose that? I don't think so. And
good argument, Larry. Very good. I'm sorry, you were going to say more. Go ahead.
No, I think that's one of the reasons that Ray's exactly right, that if Netanyahu's left to his own devices, man, he'd be out there killing the Palestinians right and left. But he's not doing it. And part of the reason he's not doing it is I think Witkoff has told him, don't test us, don't try it.
Well, that's a good surmise, and let 100 flowers bloom. But on Truth Social, the President Trump has said, after Gaza is all cleaned out and pacified, that's when we'll do this deal about me owning Gaza. So, it's not hard to read that as to say, well, we're going to let the Israelis do what they really want to do, and that is complete genocide in Gaza, and then we'll figure out what our role will be. So,
it would kill Trump emotionally if he were known as Genocide Donald, the way Joe is known as Genocide Joe. Don't you both agree with that?
Well, no, I don't. I don't think it's water off a duck's back. Trump has been accused of 100 million things. I think he's pretty much, he's got a kind of a Velcro or kind of a vest on him where this stuff bounces off him. I don't think he's terribly concerned about that.
Yeah, but let's be clear about, Trump is not going to put Americans in to clean out Gaza. He's made that clear. No boots on the ground. We're not going to pay for it.
That's exactly right.
Israel can't do it. Israel has tried to do it for 15 months. They failed. There is other information out that the Israeli military has been lying about their casualties. It's not 800 or 900 KIA on the Israeli side. It's closer to 5,000.
That is a significant number for a military as small as theirs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I use the example of New York City metropolitan area, which is about the same size as the entire population of Israel. Can you imagine how the people of New York City would react if 800, just let's go with the lower number, if 800 police had been murdered, killed in 1 year? I mean, there'd be chaos. So, Israel's demonstrated that it is military. Yes, it's vicious. It's killed a lot of civilians, but it's militarily incompetent and capable of defeating Hamas. Hamas is still standing stronger today, I would argue, than they were on October 7th.
Larry, I didn't say they're going to win. Okay, I didn't say they're going to win. I'm going to say they're going to keep trying.
Oh yes, you and I agree on that.
Netanyahu doesn't really have any other option other than to keep trying and complete the genocide. They're trying to extinguish a whole people. They've made a pretty good dent in that already. And who knows how many British or American troops will, on the QT, support this kind of thing. But what about those 2,000-pound and 1,000-pound bombs? Yeah, this is not meant to discourage Netanyahu. This is meant to enable him should he want to do it. That's my view.
Trump is looking the other way at the IDF killing children in the West Bank, Larry.
Well, right, but he said, okay, let's take the 2,000-pound bombs. He sent them bombs that their planes can't carry.
Right.
No, that's not right about the Moabs. That's not right. There are only about 5 or 6 Moabs in the whole world, okay? So we're talking about 2,000-pound bombs, not Moabs.
So Moabs, they can't carry. 2,000-pound bombs, they can.
Right.
That's right.
But we noticed since the ceasefire is going in place, they haven't been dropping them on Gaza.
Okay.
Nor have they been dropping them.
I want to transition to Ukraine. Ray, what is the effect on the intelligence community of Trump's posting on Truth Social to the effect that Zelensky is a dictator? He's out of office. He canceled elections. He's stealing money. What is the CIA, which has told Joe Biden the opposite of all of that for 3 years, what is the effect on them when Trump says things like that? Played Joe Biden like a fiddle. Well, if he played Joe Biden like a fiddle, it's because of what the CIA told Joe Biden, right?
That's exactly right. They played Bill Burns like a fiddle. When Bill Burns, in early July 2023, went to Helsinki and told the president, look, you can say Russia has already lost. Their military has been exposed as ineffectual. And Biden got up in Helsinki and said Russia has already lost. Well, where did Bill Burns get that? Well, I did a little research. You know where he was 10 days before? Kiev. He had a lot of contact with Zelensky, and he asked Zelensky, how's it going? He said, oh, don't worry about it. Tell the president we got it. We got it all settled here. Russia has already lost. And Bill Burns said, oh, wow. And he checked with his people. What do you think about that? Now, his people are totally corrupt. And they say, oh, well, if Zelensky says so, well, that's where we're getting our information. It must be good. So tell the president. So that's how bad it is.
Okay, I'm not talking about the CIA folks on the ground who are truly reporting what they believe is accurate information. I'm talking about the people around Bill Burns who perverted that so they could tell Joe Biden what they thought he wanted to hear. How did they react when Donald Trump has virtually exposed them as frauds by the statements Trump made on Truth Social about Zelensky and about the war? Ray.
Well, Judge, you're making a distinction that I'm not sure is there. The whole place has been corrupted. How are you going to get people to work for people like Bill Burns, a windsock, if there ever was one, without you yourself being a windsock? So whereas in past years, I thought that, well, the hierarchy is kind of tainting this, or at least presenting what the president wants to hear, which of course is the case, I'm not sure there are any honest analysts left of any consequence that know the real story and that will report it. So when Ratcliffe comes in and Tulsi Gabbard over him, they're going to have to clean house completely. And all these people that have been windsocked, they're going to have to go. Question is, who are you going to replace them with? Because even academia has been totally corrupted by this notion that Putin is Stalin or Hitler or the devil himself, and the Russians are to be feared, not to be negotiated with.
All right, Larry, the same question. Does the intelligence community feel Trump now sees the games they played with Joe Biden by the statements Trump made on Truth Social about the war, about the origins of the war, and about Zelensky?
I don't know. What I do know is that we now have reports that USAID was funding to the tune of $140 million a month this information operation to portray Russia is evil, Putin is dying.
140 million a month?
Yeah.
Taxpayer dollars.
Yes. And so that the propaganda blowback, it was going both ways. It was going around the world. It was hitting back in the United States. It was being told to the president. I mean, this was an enormous effort. Now it looks like what has happened since Trump took down USAID is that it's cut off that flow of money. So that stopped. And it's noteworthy that not just, we're not hearing quite the propaganda screeds that we were before, like, North Koreans in Kursk and all that nonsense. But, we're seeing the reality on the ground, the word about what's actually happening to the Ukrainian soldiers, that's actually starting to filter out now.
I want to play a clip from today, actually, an interview of Secretary of State Marco Rubio by my friend and former colleague, Catherine Herridge, who started her own podcast, and this is the maiden interview of it. Now, this is 1.5 minutes long, but it's rather telling. She starts out by asking Rubio how the statement that Zelensky is a dictator plays out. He then goes on and on and on, but his on and on and on is very interesting. And I will ask each of you to comment on it if you'll be a little patient with the length of it. Chris, cut number 7.
When President Trump posts that President Zelensky is a dictator without elections, what are you thinking?
I think President Trump is very upset at President Zelensky, and in some cases, and rightfully so. Look, number one, Joe Biden had frustrations with Zelensky. People shouldn't forget it. There are newspaper articles out there about how he cursed at him in a phone call because Zelensky, instead of saying thank you for all your help, is immediately out there messaging what we're not doing or what he's not getting. I think the second thing is, frankly, I was personally very upset because we had a conversation with President Zelensky, the vice president and I, the three of us. And we discussed this issue about the mineral rights. And we explained to them, look, we want to be in a joint venture with you, not because we're trying to steal from your country, but because we think that's actually a security guarantee. If we're your partner in an important economic endeavor, we get to get paid back some of the money the taxpayers have given, close to $200 billion. And it also, now we have a vested interest in the security of Ukraine. And he said, sure, we want to do this deal. It makes all the sense in the world. The only thing is I need to run it through my legislative process. They have to approve it. I read 2 days later that Zelensky's out there saying, I rejected the deal. I told him, no way, that we're not doing that. Well, that's not what happened in that meeting. So you start to get upset by somebody. We're trying to help these guys. One of the points the president made in his messaging is not that we don't care about Ukraine, but Ukraine is on another continent. It doesn't directly impact the daily lives of Americans. We care about it because it has implications for our allies and ultimately for the world. There should be some level of gratitude here about this. And when you don't see it and you see him out there accusing the president of living in a world of disinformation, that's very counterproductive.
Larry, to you first. I'm a little befuddled by this. Is it not true, correct me if I'm wrong, that the areas of Ukraine which have all these mineral deposits that Trump is interested in are the Russian areas of Ukraine?
Correct. Yeah. So
So,
he can.
so how is Zelensky going to give that to Trump or the State Department or anybody?
Hey, he's going to cut him a deal. He's going to throw in the Brooklyn Bridge for free. You know,
It would make about the same amount of sense.
yes. I mean, this is let's call this the Brooklyn Bridge deal of Ukraine. That's what this is.
Ray, does Marco Rubio know what he's talking about in that interview with Catherine Herridge?
He sure as hell does. You know, this business about the mineral wealth in Ukraine, that was raised first by Zelensky. And Trump's people were clever enough to see, oh, we can exploit this. We'll play dumb, and we'll say, yeah, I would really like to have a share of that to repay ourselves for all the billions and billions that we put into your country. It was really a propaganda, a real benefit here. So the real deal here is that they're preparing to let Zelensky down. Whether there can be elections before they let him down, I'm not so sure. I think he's on his way out within the next couple of months, if not weeks. And what Lavrov reported to the Russian parliament, the Duma, just yesterday, was really magnificent when he was asked about this Ukraine thing. And I said, what do you think about Ukraine? And he said, well, I just got back from Saudi Arabia, and you know, we're going to evaluate what the Americans say we're going to compare that with what they do. But we think that the whole business about drawing Ukraine into NATO, that even the president realizes that that's a no-winner, okay? And so we're going to see that as a signal to continue these negotiations. We think that the artificial obstacles that were introduced by Obama and Biden can easily be resolved, but we have to wait and see. It's a step-by-step process. One last comment here. That's an annual briefing that the Secretary of State equivalent, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, gives to the Duma, the Russian parliament. He's required to do that. He comes back from Riyadh, takes a shower, goes before the Duma and says this, you ought to watch his performance, Q&A and everything else. He has it down pat. And he said some really interesting things about China and about North Korea to boot. So these guys are serious.
Larry, Lavrov is the best in the business, and he's at the top of his game. Last question. Why is the Biden pipeline of military aid to Ukraine still flowing, Larry?
No, I think it's probably primarily bureaucratic inertia, but let's also be clear that
Trump could stop it with a phone call.
I'm not sure he could stop it with a phone call because it's just like, you know, a big rock rolling down the mountain. Once it starts moving, it's tough to stop. But we have had reports that the Ukrainians are complaining that they are not getting what they thought that they were going to get. So there has actually been a slowdown in the deliveries, if not an actual halt on some of them. So this is, you know, it sure looks like the Trump folks have decided to bail out, to put an end to this, and turn it all over to the Europeans. Here, you can take this, enjoy it, and we're going to walk away. They've made it clear, you know, Trump's made it clear. Hey, you want Ukraine needs some more weapons? Fine, Europe, you buy them from us, and then you can sell it to the Ukrainians.
Yeah,
Such
Ray,
a deal.
Ray Ritter and Colonel McGregor both agree, independent of each other, that Zelensky's days are numbered and they're down to weeks. Do you agree?
I do. Yeah, I said months just a moment ago. You know, if they say weeks, they're closer to the situation on the ground. Certainly, the Russians can move to the Dnieper in weeks. And, you know, that would be the coup de grace. But my caution is this. Putin doesn't necessarily have to move all the way to the Dnieper. He can deal. There are things that he can award Trump so that Trump is let down more easily. But the Russians have won. Trump, very importantly, realizes that. And this notion that Ukraine can get into NATO is bankrupt. The West Europeans are going crazy. We're going to know more tomorrow after the results of the German elections come in.
Right. Oh, I know I said last question, but now another one.
That's all right.
okay.
Hey,
It's all right.
it's your show. It's your
Yeah.
show.
All right. Another one just popped into my head. How much does the intelligence community recognize and now tell Tulsi Gabbard the unstable state of the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian government? Larry.
I think they're strongly incentivized now to do it because anybody with a brain can see that this party's over, and they don't want to be the last one in the game of musical chairs standing up. They don't want to be the one saying, "Oh yeah, everything's swell, Ukraine's going to win." You know, I think you'll see a pretty quick turnaround or a volte-face as they actually now start dishing some truth. Plus, I think Tulsi's demanding it, and going to be a little, they know that they can't get by with just going with the public relations material that they have up to this point.
All right, so Ray, I know we're getting back to basics, but can Ratcliffe go directly to the president, or does he have to go through Tulsi? Because
He could go direct.
Ratcliffe is from the George W. Bush end of the world.
No, he can go directly, but the ideal is a cordial relationship where he will call up the Tulsi and say, "Look, I need to discuss this with the president. Would you like to come along, or I'll just go at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning?" That's the kind of way it should work. Now, what I would say about what kind of advice Tulsi is getting, she's getting really good advice, okay? And she's giving that to Trump. Now, is it from the people that inhabit the CIA or the earlier NID? No, it isn't. It's from other people. Now, I know this because trusted people say that she's got really good people advising her. Now, I know that the sensible conclusions that she's making, and who told President Trump that he ought to understand how Russia feels about Ukraine, armed to the teeth with NATO weaponry right on its border. Well, Trump said, "Yeah, I understand that. I can understand." Well, that's 80% of the victory there to get a suitable arrangement. They can deal now, and they will. It seems to me in the next few weeks, we're going to have more momentum even than we've seen in the last week, and that's one hell of a lot of momentum.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. A good
FBI says back to people like me and you. Here's what they're telling the brain dead, brainwashed masses who still turn to the corporate media for their news and information. It's just remarkable to me that after Russiagate, after Ukraine, after 20 years of Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, which is now an Al-Qaeda run Syria with our help, that now they still turn to the corporate media for their news and information, and they're not scheduled. Here's what they say to people like us who are excited about what Trump's doing with the FBI. Here we go.
Danger here is fairly obvious, at least from my perspective, is that if you wind up firing thousands of FBI agents, who is going to be performing the agency's mission? Who is going to be enforcing the laws of the United States? Who is going to be carrying out counter-terrorist operations? Who's going to be busting up drug cartels? The FBI does a lot of day-to-day bread and butter work that many Americans have no idea they're out doing. They're working in the shadows. They're investigating crimes.
Revolutionary salute to our queen, Yaya's kids for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. Absolutely appreciate the love, queen. Salute to you.
Bringing people to justice. And if you go in and you fire thousands of these on the street agents, you're at least creating the potential that a lot of this crime will go unpunished and possibly lead to even more crime.
I want to ask you about
So what would you say back to that U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General who is a big defender of the blob and corruption inside the FBI? What do you say to them? If, hey, go ahead.
I mean, first of all, there's lots of problems with it. There's war on crime, but he's overlooking a lot of the other stuff the FBI is doing. For example, they just framed Chokwe Antar Lumumba, who is a progressive mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, Cooperation Jackson was for about 10 years, a darling of the radical left, right? These are socialist, black nationalists who have, won the mayorship in Jackson, Mississippi. They have, organized in the community. The Chokwe Antar Lumumba's father, the first mayor, died of a heart attack. His son later gets elected. This guy was framed by the FBI for taking bribes. Now, maybe Chokwe Antar Lumumba takes bribes. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, he has been indicted because the FBI created this fake shell company and approached him about some land that the city of Jackson, Mississippi had. And this, to remind people, right, Jackson, Mississippi had a major problem with lead in the water. I mean, it's a very, very poor town, right? And what Cooperation Jackson is trying to do is very noble, right? So they entrap him by saying, pretending to be a company that wants to buy and develop this land, and then they charge him with accepting a $100,000 bribe. Now, maybe he did accept the bribe, but we haven't heard the defense yet. Maybe his defense is that way. I didn't accept a bribe. Like, they offered to give some money to this or that charity, whatever, right? I mean, indictments are not proof. And whatever the case, it's like, it was the FBI that offered the bribe. This is classic entrapment. They've done this to a progressive black mayor within the last couple months. This is the kind of stuff the FBI gets up to way too often. And it's for these reasons that all the same people who 3, 4, 5 years ago were, loving Cooperation Jackson should be trying to prune back this agency, which is doing everything it can to destroy Cooperation Jackson.
And they did it to the Uhurus.
One example that might affect some of these leftists.
They just did it to the Uhurus. I don't know if you're familiar with that case.
Yeah.
Out of St. Louis and Tampa, St. Pete. They went and they and even the judge, even though they found him guilty of something, they didn't give him any jail time. And the judge said, these people are guilty of free speech.
Right. They were accused of being Russian agents because, I forget what the details were, but yeah, it seemed pretty minimal. This is an old thing. This goes back to Hoover, targeting mainstream black politicians. I had a friend years ago who worked for Willie Brown, who was Speaker of the House for many years, Speaker of the California Assembly in California for many, many years, African-American politician. They used to say he would have been governor of California if he had been white rather than black. She worked for him during the anti-apartheid struggle, and he actually allowed her to do a lot of anti-apartheid organizing. Anyway, one time there was some gala, and they were selling tickets for it, and at the last minute, some company that had made legitimate donations to Willie Brown in the past said, we want a couple more tickets. It even bought some tickets the proper way, through the credit card or a check, whatever. And they were like, last minute, can we get 2 more tickets? Here's some cash. And my friend said, this seems reasonable. And she gave this cash to Willie Brown's chief of staff. And this woman was like, absolutely not. You do not ever accept cash. What? And my friend was totally shocked. What could this overreaction be? Well, lo and behold, it turned out this was a sting operation. But Willie Brown was hip to it. Willie Brown was not some sort of radical. Willie Brown was a mainstream Democrat, is a mainstream Democrat. And it was they had some phishing company that the government had seized somehow. The FBI was using it. It looked legitimate. And they were trying to just sneak this little cash payment in to then say, Willie Brown is guilty of, taking bribes, blah, blah, blah. But that's the level of security that successful black politicians in America have had to develop over the decades because of the constant harassment and in attempts at entrapment and blackmail by the FBI.
And what? And who is
never went to the press about this, you know? But this sort of stuff happens all the time.
And so yes, and who would be directing the FBI to have that kind of politics? So what is that about? Do you have any theories on that?
I mean, we have hints from the Hoover days that it was like about racism and this fear of a black messiah, and that the Hoover was personally like very concerned about black people in America uniting and getting organized. And so they being the FBI, didn't just focus their ire on radicals like the Black Panther. They were also concerned about maintaining control of the elected political class.
Yep.
You know, it's not that they would necessarily prosecute Willie Brown, but it's just like, you know, you want to get dirt on everyone. You want to set everyone up and have something on them, right? So, I mean, who nowadays would be in charge of that? I don't know. But this is part of the whole thing about institutional legacy and culture. And this is also hopefully some of the stuff we can find out if there really is a campaign of massive declassification of documents, right? Because Hoover's long gone. It started with Hoover. It was his obsession. He puts in print, you know, the danger of a black messiah. But who would be doing that in the late 80s? Who decided to set up Chokwe Antar Lumumba in Jackson, Mississippi? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's just because, you know, as Chuck Schumer revealed when he said,
you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you.
So what he revealed when he said that is that the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, they don't work for the president. They don't work. Yeah. So that means they don't work for democracy. They don't work for the citizens. They're working for some dark moneyed group, which is, to me, you know, the handful of billionaires who actually run things in the Western world. That's who the FBI actually works for. They don't, and they're not actually a crime fighting organization. They're a political organization that is undermining citizens from coming together and opposing oligarchy. They work for the oligarchs. They don't work for the democratically elected politicians.
Yeah. Their mission has been to keep us disorganized, to keep us on the back foot, so that we are easier to exploit, easier to rule, and you know, easier to shift the burden of taxation to working people and liberate the elite from paying their fair share of taxes and all of that stuff. That's absolutely what it's about. It's a kind of, you know, class warfare. Whether or not the FBI even understand it as such, that's absolutely what's going on. And they are also, you know, empire builders, and it's their, you know, their own, these networks of people who are, you know, in it to win it. And you have to curry favor with these powerful interests along the way up. You know, one hand washes the other.
You know, and so just to wrap this up, when people say, well, you know, Kash Patel's just going to hire his own goons that are loyal to Trump, or they're not really, you know, they might get rid of USAID, but they're not against the mission. They're just going to fold that back into the State Department and do it. Hey, we'll deal with that monster when it shows itself. You can't deal with the hypothetical. We're, you know, so again, that is destructive. I find that very destructive, just as you find it destructive. And instead of taking advantage of the moment and taking advantage of someone who's an obvious disruptor and is an enemy of the establishment, Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Kash Patel, instead of taking advantage of that, they're just pissing it away. And it's naivety in the extreme.
Yeah, and they're siding with the FBI. They're siding with USAID. Yeah. You know, and Kash Patel, it's important to remember, he got to start as a defense attorney. For 8 years, he was a defense attorney in the beginning of his career in Dade County. And he, in his book and elsewhere, has expressed this defense attorney's sense of, you know, the law needs to be stress tested constantly. And he does seem to have a genuine concern for the rule of law and democracy. So, I mean, I take him at face value until we see otherwise. That I think he thinks that America will be a better place if we do not have an unaccountable, corrupt, bullying FBI, but that we actually have a responsive, accountable, transparent crime-fighting organization.
And if
we're a long way from that now.
And if Pam Bondi and Kash Patel decide to go after the free speech of pro-Palestinian protesters, we'll deal with that then.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is what many progressive leftists are screaming at the top of their lung. Throw the baby out with the bathwater because I disagree with their policy on this. I'm going to get rid of all the good things because they're Zionists. I can't work with them, which is the opposite of how organizing works.
It's, to use a medical metaphor, this position that we're criticizing is sort of like if you had a cancerous tumor, being, oh, I don't want any treatment. I don't want an operation. I could get an infection if I have this tumor taken out. It's like, yeah, you could. That's a risk. But then you deal with that when that happens, because right now you have a tumor. Like, this is the problem you actually have. Yes, you might have another kind of problem in the future, but right now you got this problem and it's growing and it needs to be dealt with now.
Christian Parenti, I really
him and his that we've got these cities and these towns that are being overrun by gangs and the crime out of control. I absolutely agree with that. And guess what? It's the MAGA gang. It is the white supremacists that have decided to descend upon places such as Springfield, Ohio. So I agree with him. I just disagree with who the problems are. The problems are him and his minions. The problems aren't the people that have come to make.
I hear from a lot of black people. I got a lot of black people that have told me what's going on in their cities, what's going on in their states with migrants. I have never heard, never once have I had anybody ever contact me, write me to tell me that it's MAGA that is giving them a hard time in their state or in their city, that the MAGAs are taking all the resources up, that they had to close the schools because of MAGA needed to take up the school space. No, I've never heard that not once. This is why I say we got to get rid of the Democratic Party and we got to get the people out of the Democratic Party. It makes the brain rot.
Cities and these towns that are being overrun by gangs and the crime out of control. I absolutely agree with that. And guess what? It's the MAGA gang.
But we didn't even have to say migrants. We could have said, no, it's the gang bangers, the blackface Ku Klux Klan members who are terrorizing our communities with all this poverty. This lady is sick, bro. This lady's sick, bro. She know goddamn well what's happening in the black fucking community. I don't want to see no fucking MAGA and it's poverty everywhere, crime, robbery, rape, pillage, plundering, all because of their policies. But once again, what she gonna feed up to black people is white supremacy is the real problem. That's a scam and a motherfucking hustle. She would never do nothing about no fucking white supremacy, bro.
Gang.
It is. This lady, they pushing her to be next in line. See, they want her to be Cynthia Jackson Lee. Sheila Jackson Lee, who died. They think this lady gonna be Maxine Waters. They think she gonna talk this bullshit, this sister girl sorority Greek freak divine nonsense for 60 years. Man, her hustle is gonna end quick. We're not gonna.
Is the white supremacists that have decided to descend upon places such as Springfield, Ohio. So I agree with him. I just disagree with who the problems are. The problems are him and his minions.
The problems are older men and older women who went into the voting booth and voted for Trump. She didn't even pick.
They don't got no fucking influence.
Like black people that, if she said January 6th, at least then you could say they were convicted of a crime. She didn't even have to go that far. They have demonized Trump supporters to the point where just voting for Trump makes you the equivalent of a Venezuelan gang member. She said, no, worse, not equivalent. She said they're worse than the gangs.
The problems are him and his minions. The problems aren't the people that have come to make our economy stronger, the people that
they came to make our economy stronger. Has anybody, you ever heard of any, has anyone ever in the history of life got anywhere to make anybody stronger? See what I'm saying? What I'm saying, folks? This is why people are garbage. This is why Tim Black is forced. This is why I'm forced to destroy people. You have a job. Do you go to your job to make your company stronger? See what they do? They didn't come here to build a life for themselves. They came to make America stronger. See this Saint, meaning Saint Juan. Saint Juan. Saint Maria. You know what I'm saying? That is not why Umbufu came here. There's Africans, there's Asians, there's Chinese. Saint Sun. Saint Sun did not come to America to make America strong, Goofy. Sun and his cousin, his sister, his wife, whoever he came with from China, the migrants from Ukraine, they came here to avoid getting their asses blown to get the smithereens in Ukraine, who no longer have a home because stupid ass Zelensky put them in war with Russia. There's no way that Putin's gonna let them be there and be fucking with NATO like that. He's not gonna allow that to be on his doorstep. A satellite office for the United States. It came in because they need to get away from the bombs. Okay, but Jasmine Crockett, Saint Julio, Saint Maria, they put magical dust on immigrants. What do they put on black people? What do they put on poor white people and poor black people and poor Latino people or poor Asians that are already here, that paid into the system? What they put on you? Just dirt. Ain't no magic in the dirt they put on you. Hell, they don't even want you to know where your tax dollars went. They would have defended the agency that's sending your tax dollars to do all types of nefarious dumb shit. They don't even want that to be investigated. That's what they do for you. That's how you know it's crooked. Why? We got people that are so vain. We got people that are so vain and so simple-minded. Think about it. Think about it how immature you have to be, how naive you must be to think Jasmine Crockett likes your ass. That, oh, she just says that because she really cares about the people, the migrants. These people are walking dollar signs. The Democratic Party don't even see them as people. They see them as a vote and a dollar sign. A dollar sign because there's a corporation that they can work for, and everything that they need will require a contract that they need to write off. That's really what all the Democrats did with black people. In the 70s, they just made us a project for them to make money off of. Same thing with DEI. It's just a project to make money off of.
That's a fact.
You understand? It's that love, Goofy. It's, hey, we can make money helping these people. Making it look like we're helping these people. Same thing. It doesn't even have to be effective. As long as we get a contract for it, yay!
Minions. The problems aren't the people that have come to make our economy stronger, the people that have actually been able to help to continue to make sure that we got out of the big hole that he put us in.
What is she even talking about? She didn't even know what she was talking about, Johnson. She just makes up shit. And then everybody just goes, yay! Man, I'm so glad. Finally, someone said it. Hello? What the hell did she say? Nothing. And she used about 30 words to say it. What is she even talking about? What's this even mean?
To make sure that we got out of the big hole that he put us in after COVID-19 with his ineptness.
So she's saying the migrants that Joe Biden let in under the border helped get us out the hole. There it is. I rest my case. They make money off the migrants. That's the whole point. She said they came here to help us get out the hole. That's not why anybody came. I thought they were seeking asylum. I thought people get approved here because they sought asylum. I didn't know they came here to make America strong. I thought they came here because their lives are being threatened in the country they were in.
Like, yeah, I agree that there are problems in our communities, but usually it's some white supremacists on the.
Oh, now it's white supremacists. Oh, first you said it was MAGA. Now it's white supremacists are the problem in our communities. Really? Who remembers the movie Drop Squad? Well, Drop Squad was a great movie, man. Hey, very low budget, but it was a great premise. It was an organization for black people. And what it would do is if you were a black person that was selling black people out, they would drop your ass. Now they would come get you, snatch your ass off the streets, and put you in an intensive boot camp where they would torture you, beat the shit out of you, and make you realize the errors of your ways, and then could reprogram your brain. And it would be like, and it wasn't all getting beat up, but they smack you around if they had to. They would show you your life at different stages, how you used to be, how you was raised around black people. Why are you treating black people like shit now? Oh, come on, man, I'm just trying to get ahead. But now you throw black people under the bus, you feed them liquor, you feed them menthol cigarettes and Church's Fried Chicken and alcohol and selling them 40 ounces. More liquor, that shit's killing them. Why you doing that? Oh, come on, man, I'm a businessman. So then they drop squad your ass. And they would take time to like bring you, show how you were as a kid when you loved black people and when black people was loving you. Your grandmother took care of you and your aunt and your sister, and they would show you changing before your eyes. And at the end of it, hopefully at the end of it, you like, man, I don't know what happened to me. This country has contaminated me and I have betrayed my people. I'm gonna do better. And now I want to be a member of the Drop Squad, and I want to go out and reprogram other black people who have betrayed themselves by this white supremacist system that has made them become this. So that's what we need for Jasmine Crockett. We need Jasmine Crockett. We need Tim Scott. We need Van Jones. We need Whoopi Goldberg. We need a lot of people, Joy Reid. All the Democrats got to go, definitely. Every Democrat needs to go because they cannot. Jasmine Crockett probably got to go twice. They cannot believe this shit they're shoveling. Black people, it's one thing to say America has white supremacy. You can say that. I agree. That's true. You don't believe it's white supremacy? Do me a favor, white people. Go to any large language model, whether it's ChatGPT, Copilot, Grok, doesn't matter. Go to any of them. Oh, no, go to Midjourney, any of them that can create images. Type in, please generate a picture of a happy family. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a white family. Now, that's white supremacy. See? Because it assumes that that's what a happy family is. White. So look, so if you say the country has white supremacy, it just means white is the dominant thing and that's the default and anything else is other. Well, we need more resources. You don't say, oh, it's Trump. No. These problems exist way before Trump. These problems predate Trump, dumbass. If Trump's the problem, why was the shit bad before Trump? Why was it not good under Biden? Why was the black kids not reading on grade level under Biden? Because it ain't Trump, dummy. That's why. Okay, but when you say shit like this and nobody black calls her out who's not Officer Tatum, who's not Candace Owens, and that's why you like those people. You like her because they're the only ones telling real shit. Or Charleston White, because they're black and they're saying real shit about some shit. But then they pull punches on the whites. Not good. Not good. But this is bullshit, folks. One more time. for those in the back seats.
COVID-19 with his ineptness. Like, yeah, I agree that there are problems in our communities, but usually it's some white supremacists on the other side. He said that we've got.
No, it's not usually some white supremacists on the other side. Usually on the other side, it's another black person with a gun in their hand saying, run your pockets, mofo. That's what it usually is. You're not keeping it real. Now, we could talk about how that happened. We could talk about the constraints of the system that pit us against each other. I don't care where you go in the world. If you go somewhere where there's a lack of resources, you're going to see some crime. You can talk about that. You can explain it. But you can't say white supremacists is usually the problem. Roland Martin's time is up. Joy Reid's time is up. Don Lemon, his time is up. Time's up on the bullshit. We can't fix anything with sellouts. Your solution should not be black people are horrible. Your solution has to be we need to fix it. What are ways that we're going to deal with it? But the solution will never be to say Trump. Because Trump only been president for 4 years in 3 weeks. And anybody that loves black people has to keep it real with black people. Okay? So you got to be able to do that. But you also got to be willing to call out white people and call out the system and call out the Democrats. You should be able to call truth what truth is. But that's not what Jasmine Crocker's doing. That's not who she is, and that's not who she's playing for. She may have the black jersey, but she's playing for.
Revolutionary salute to our Queen Yaya's kids for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is a way of life. You know, I absolutely appreciate the love, Queen. Salute to you.
The whites.
Absolutely appreciate
the white Democrats. Or what I refer to as the Blue Klux Klan. Hello?
Well, tonight on the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats, they don't know what to do without FBAs. FBAs have said, we're cool. We're gonna sit this thing out. We're not being a part of anything. Even the Shields decided to sit down because they're sitting down not because they want to be in line with the grassroots. Their motivations because our candidate didn't win, so forget y'all, right? That's they're basically they doing it in the area of pouting. But it don't matter if they're pouting. If they're sitting down, I'm proud of them. I'm so proud of them. So this has been a conversation going on about how lost the Democrats are. And they lost because FBAs aren't in the mix, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Say Democrats are too lost to stand up to Trump. That weakness would cost them. Now, I said the Democrat Party's future hinges on whether Democrats can find candidates capable of running against a refined version of the MAGA movement. But I want to scroll down to here. They say the Democrats are lost. They need to find their path forward. Now they say the Democrat Party has tons of problems, and this time needs to be used to sort those out. The next several years cannot be solely used waiting around for the Trump administration to implode. Some in the Democrat leadership, such as House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, are making attempts, but they lack the political capital to truly counter much of Trump's actions. Yeah, because Hakeem Jeffries and the Boulay class don't have the juice. They say the Democratic Party is in desperate need of rebranding, and in doing so, its leaders must learn from their mistakes. Now, they say one of the glaring issues with Democrats for years was their alienation of moderates. Progressive politics have become increasingly dogmatic, insisting that people agree with the correct stance on a myriad of issues, or else they weren't truly progressive. Yes, these so-called progressives will sit here and call you 1,000 names if you don't agree with them. They have overused the term fascist. They overuse the term Nazi. They overuse these terms so much that it don't even have the weight it used to have. They'll say the fact that the GOP embraced Trump, they'll say masked this issue for a long time. Say, but the Democrats were pushing away the middle of American politics when they should have been embracing it. Say Trump made gains among most key demographics, including significant gains among Latino voters and young voters. Say both groups that Democrats historically have thought they could count on. Now that's interesting. They said that. They say Democrats desperately need to become more accepting of dissent. Not everyone will agree with you on every issue, and that's okay. If the Democratic Party wants to win, it needs to be broaden its coalition rather than shrink it. They say the rebranding, they say regardless of policies, must include tolerance for conflict within the Democratic ranks. Republicans have proved they can build a coalition with many disagreements, although their infighting causes them problems sometimes. It's better than losing voters because you're too rigid. Now, they said for nearly a decade, Democrats have only had to campaign against one man. They said Trump sucks all the air out of political discourse. He do, because he knows how to master the news cycle. He knows how to do that. And Democrats recognize that rather than trying to convince voters of a rival platform, Democrats could get away with simply opposing Trump for a very long time. So they worked in midterm elections and the 2020 presidential campaigns. They did in 2024. Americans had enough of the failures of the Biden administration and voted for how it was during Trump's last presidency. Whether he can deliver remains to be seen. But Democrats now need to tell voters how they will make things better, not just how Trump will make things worse. Now, of course, that Trump won't be the nominee in 2028. Democrats, they say we need to go head to head with any number of GOP candidates. A VP, J.D. Vance, already proved his abilities to campaign in the campaign debates. But there are a number of other Republicans ready to take the top spot. Okay. So they're talking about Kamala Harris is not a strong candidate, but she remains a leader in polling for Democratic presidential nomination in 2028. And that's a huge problem for Democrats. Now, let me stop there because let me say something. If Kamala Harris is the person that the Democrats saying, oh, we want her to run again because they're not running against Trump. If it was Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance is going to win. I'm going to tell you that. Nobody's voting for Kamala. The Democrats don't even have nobody. Gavin Newsom would lose to J.D. Vance. He will. Bottom line. If Trump continues on what he's doing, exposing all this corruption, exposing all the fraud.
What I just seen J.D. Vance do to those Europeans, none of those Democrats can stand up to him.
All the different things that's been going on in this government, and he somehow just put us at a better place than what we were with Biden. You understand? How would the Democrats even win? All J.D. Vance got to do is just continue the policies of Trump, and he'll be good for 8 years. J.D. Vance, I promise you that. See, the Democrats, they've done too much, but they pissed off black people. They played with our reparations for way too long. That's what they end up doing, and they played with us and played with us and played with us. They don't understand what happened with the California Reparations Commission is really with the stick that broke the camel's back. What Gavin Newsom and them Boulay members pulled in California will say, okay, man, that's enough. That is enough. And that's why a lot of people sat it out. A lot of people sat out the election. We're talking about FBAs. Yes, you had some people show up and vote and all of that, but it wasn't the amount that she needed to win because they pissed FBAs off about playing in our face with our reparations. The Democrats have no leader. They're trying to manufacture one that's not going to work because the FBA is not supporting you. The Democrat Party is just a noise in a can if FBAs is not supporting it. And we're doing a great thing by not supporting the Democrats. For a long time, we have been fighting. Don't support these people. Don't. They have nothing good for us. The Biden administration really showed what they really thought about black people, taking foreign nationals and giving them billions of dollars every month while FBAs are homeless. While we're struggling to go to the grocery store and like, oh my God, look at the prices. But you got migrants eating for free. And the Democrats brought them in here. And giving them debit cards with thousands of dollars on there for food. But yet we can't get it. You understand? The Democrats is in shambles. They broken into 1,000 pieces. They don't know how to pick it up because the way Trump operates, he won't let, listen, Trump learned a lot from his first presidency. He ain't gonna make that mistake twice. He won't give the Democrats anywhere to breathe. And they say they got the midterms coming up. I don't want to see no Democrats winning a freaking thing. No, Lord. Midterms next year. And I'm gonna look at the ballot. Who's on the ballot next year? Oh, I'm definitely gonna look at it. Cause them Democrats are, and it serves them right why they broken apart. See, I told y'all, black people, we have been the ones that's been holding everything together. And when the glue removes itself, nobody know how to do anything. Because they truly depended on us to do it all. When they kept telling black people, you got to save democracy. In other words, you got to save the status quo for us. You're not going to benefit off the status quo, but the rest of us will. And black folks are saying now, like, no. If I'm not getting nothing, you're not getting nothing either. If I'm suffering, you going to suffer with me. If I'm in pain, you going to be in pain with me. If you want that pain to end, give me my reparations. Give me my anti-black hate crime bill. End this mass incarceration of our people. Give our people our just due. No, we don't want no DEI program. We want the same money you gave the migrants, Democrats.
Hold on. Revolutionary salute to Supernova for the donation to the war chest. Revolution is well life. Absolutely appreciate the love, family. Say thank you for all you do for us. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings to you, family. I definitely appreciate the love. Salute.
And you know me, like I said, Democrats is, I'm laser focused on them. If they even try it, I'm on them. Because I am so tired of how they played my people for years. My people really believed in what the Democrats were selling. And everybody else benefited off of the Democrats except black people. So now nobody gonna benefit from the Democrats at this point. I mean, unless you're in a Democrat enclave, I guess. You understand? Now, I was seeing that they was talking about the mayor's race in New York with Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, right? They were talking about some black folks want to support Andrew Cuomo a lot more than Eric Adams, right? Let's see what happens with the migrant situation. I wouldn't go vote for no Andrew Cuomo if he wants to keep the migrants over there. Oh no, if Adams want to get them out, okay, hey, I'll vote for Mayor Adams then. Anybody's gonna get them people out of my city. Well, what you know what I'm saying? If I was in New York, if I had to vote, yeah, if he's willing to work with Tom Homan and get him out, that'd be the guy I vote for. But you know how them liberal cities are. You know how that goes. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it's good what's going on with the Democrats right now. And FBAs, don't you stick your neck out for none of them. They gonna come up to you, what Trump is this, man. Trump ain't doing nothing. Biden did worse to me than Trump. You know what I'm saying? So Democrats, this is what you get for messing over black people. Maybe next time you'll give us our
What if I told you that there's an ancient prophecy that's been hidden for centuries, and it foretells the reign of one last pope. What if I told you that Pope Francis, the man sitting on the throne of St. Peter right now, matches the prophecy in chilling detail? And now, as whispers of peace and safety echo across the globe, sudden destruction looms. This isn't just a conspiracy, people. This isn't wild speculation. This is the prophecy of the popes. You see, in the 12th century, an Irish bishop named Saint Malachy received a vision of all future popes, carefully documenting 112 cryptic Latin phrases, each corresponding to a future pontiff. For centuries, this prophecy remained hidden, only to resurface in the 16th century with shocking accuracy. It ended with the 112th pope, the final leader of the Catholic Church, a pope only known as Petrus Romanus, which means Peter the Roman. Now, this final pope, according to prophecy, would shepherd the church through its great tribulation, witnessing the destruction of Rome itself. Many dismissed the prophecy, laughing at the idea that it could mean anything for our modern world. Until now, that is. Because Pope Francis is the 112th Pope. You heard that right. And as of today, he is in the hospital, gravely ill with double pneumonia. And according to this news article and others, he doesn't believe he's going to make it. Now, let's be clear here. The timing of this is disturbing. For the first time in modern history, the Vatican has been at the center of a global movement towards religious unity, drawing Christianity closer to Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and all the other world religions. Why? And let's not forget that they intend to embrace the presence of quote-unquote extraterrestrial life if it becomes revealed. Here's the thing. Under Pope Francis, the Catholic Church has pushed for a one-world religion, welcoming global faith leaders into what some believe is the formation of a new spiritual order. He spoke of economic reform, sustainability, aligning very closely with the WEF and the global elites who are pushing for the quote-unquote Great Reset. Furthermore, he encourages interfaith unity, basically saying all paths lead to God, totally ignoring the fact that Jesus Christ himself said, "No one comes to the Father except through me." So we have this radical pope who is the 112th pope that aligns with the prophecy of the popes, who at this very moment is on his deathbed suffering from double pneumonia. And here's where things get even stranger. You see, the Bible gives us very specific warnings about the days before sudden calamity. 1 Thessalonians 5:3 tells us, "For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them." Think about it. World leaders are crying out for peace and safety like never before. Just a few months ago, we were on the brink of World War III, nuclear annihilation. And now, with Trump in office, people seem to think everything's fine now. But is it? That's not for me to decide. However, from the Vatican's calls for interfaith harmony to the political elites working towards global unity, the warnings are right in front of us. And just as this movement peaks, just as the world seems to be on the brink of peace, the final pope in the prophecy of the Pope is struck down with an illness that could very well claim his life.
The Vatican says Pope Francis will remain in the hospital as he battles a respiratory tract infection. The 88-year-old pontiff has been hospitalized 4 times since he was elected in 2013. CBS News senior correspondent Seth Doan has the latest from Italy. Seth?
What we know from the Vatican earlier in the day, they called it a complex clinical picture. Dr. John LaPook told us whenever an 88-year-old is admitted to the hospital with a lung infection, it can be a cause for serious concern, particularly if it's caused by multiple different organisms, which is the case with what the Pope is battling. Before he was admitted, we'd seen the Pope breathless at times and various points handing over speeches to aides to complete them.
There's no question about it. The Vatican officials are downplaying the severity. But sources inside the Holy See confirm that this could be the end. If Pope Francis passes away, the implications could be earth-shattering. Will the world descend into the prophesied chaos just as Scripture foretells? You know, we're going to have to just wait and see on this because nobody knows for sure. However, we are watching events unfold in real time, and no one is talking about the deeper implications. But make no mistake, something is coming. Is it next year? Is it 100 years from now? Or is it 1,000 years from now? Nobody knows. But what we do know is that we've seen the warnings and we've read the prophecies. And now we ask the question that nobody dares to ask. What happens next?
The final pope. Tell us about that, Tom.
Yeah, Gary. And first of all, let me preface this by saying it is not hype to say that this is the most important research I've ever personally been involved in. And the prophetic implications of it could be beyond any kind of hype that I'd be able to add to that anyway. It does use a famous Catholic prophecy that's simply called the prophecy of the popes. People can look it up on Wikipedia if they want to know more about that. But what makes this prophecy important is that given almost 900 years ago, 1139 or approximately 900 years ago, was published out of the secret archives of the Vatican, right? Brought out and put into a book called Lignum Vitae over 400 years ago. But what does this prophecy do? What does it say? Well, it tells us every pope that would exist from the time of Malachi Morgare, so Celestine II, down to the final pope, who it names Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. And why this pope is important is because, according to the Catholic prophecy, this will be the false prophet of end times fame who will help give rise to the Antichrist. I've been saying publicly something that I have never said before about any book that I've written, including best-selling books, and that is that this is without doubt the most important research I ever personally have been involved with, because in fact, I can tell you that when Chris Putnam and I were doing the research, there were 2 or 3 times we stopped in our tracks. Stuff started falling in our laps, from dusty corridors inside universities, lost books, all the way to Dane County, Wisconsin, and the murder of Edward Coons. I mean, people are going to read about stuff in here that they haven't read anywhere else. And when you put the math together behind the probability that this is all chance, it becomes, well, let's just say you have to be living on another planet not to know that there is something going on, and it smells supernatural.
Now, nobody knows what's coming. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Like I said before, we can only watch and see. But I want to know what you think about this. Do you believe that Pope Francis could be the last pope? Do you believe that he could be Petrus Romanus, according to the prophecy of the popes? Or do you think that this whole thing is just blown way out of proportion? Please post in the comments below.
Minutes of horror, I made a video about portals. When you go to that video, you can see the thumbnail. It says they are everywhere, and it shows a photo of a portal. The title, they are preparing us for something big. And this video was made all the way back in October of 2024. Now, this is what I said in the beginning of that video. And really quick, we're just going to go ahead and do a flashback. It's just a prank, bro. It's just a glitch, bro. It's just art, bro. Portals, portals, portals. The topic of portals had been really gaining steam through different forms of media like movies and video games, but the topic of portals has become really hot lately in our everyday lives out of nowhere, and you have to ask yourself why. We are just seeing portal imagery more so than we've ever seen it before, and you have to ask yourself, is it just art, bro, or are they trying to convey a message? Because we know that they use what they consider art and different forms of media like movies, video games, and music videos and so forth, TV shows, to relay a message, to show us the truth in plain sight, and sometimes to get us mentally prepared for what's coming in the future. So yeah, I made that video because the portal imagery was just everywhere. Matter of fact, we saw portal imagery in the VMAs. We also saw portal imagery during the 2024 closing ceremony of the Olympics. And when I saw that portal ceremony, I knew something was up, because if you go back to the 2012 Olympics, They were basically showing us C-19 imagery, and then we saw what happened. So many people had noticed the eerie imagery between the opening ceremony of the 2012 Olympics and the C-19 that the fact checkers had to be released from the sewers and toilets they reside in to quote unquote debunk it. Well, like I said, during the 2024 closing ceremony of the Olympics, there was portal imagery. We saw a big portal. We saw this golden entity they call the Voyager come through it with all these gray entities surrounding it. Now, at that time, I thought it had to do with CERN. But now I'm thinking, theorizing, it may have to do with something else. But with all this portal imagery in 2024, it felt like they were celebrating something, honoring something. There were even other channels making videos on the topic. Matter of fact, a channel that I watch, A Call for an Uprising, I don't know what channel he's under now because he's always getting banned, but he even made a video on how we are always seeing portals lately. So what were they trying to tell us about portals? But anyway, we'll come back to that. But right now, I want to go ahead and talk about the state of Texas because something interesting may be going on beneath the state. Now, for quite some time, I have spoken about a card game on this channel called the Illuminati card game, the game of conspiracy. The reason why I've made videos on this card game happens to be because these cards continue to quote unquote predict future events. But I don't see it like fortune telling or tarot reading. No, I see it like the so-called powers that be. They are telling us what they're doing ahead of time through this card game. No different than any other form of media. So this card game is very strange, but if you know, then you know what's taking place here. Texas actually happens to be featured in this card game. Matter of fact, it's one of those very rare cards that has two different styles of artwork. Now, if you were playing this card game back in the early 90s, taking a look at these Texas cards individually, they really make no sense whatsoever. Taking a look at this one card, you see a man with a cigar in his mouth. He's on the phone. His pockets are filled with cash. The van is filled with cash. You see a satellite in the background. Looks like some kind of deal is being made here. Just a lot of money. This is a place card. The description of this card reads, "You wouldn't believe what's hidden in the miles and miles of Texas plains." They are counting on that. Counting is bold. The card continues to read, "You may place one plot card, except a goal under Texas." So this has to do with something under Texas. And it's a violent conservative government card. But like I said, there is a second Texas card, different artwork, but the same description. These are the same cards, and you're supposed to look at them side by side to get what's going on here. Taking a look at the artwork on this card, you can see a bull with antennas for horns. It has robotic antennas and is branded with a pyramid. This is not a real bull. It's an artificial bull, AI. So taking a look at these cards side by side again, really wouldn't make much sense back in the 90s. Like, what would you really make of this? But taking a look at it in today's world, it makes a lot of sense. The picture is really clear. You have a man on the left with a lot of money, looks like a big deal has gone through. And on the right, you see artificial intelligence. Texas, a lot of money, artificial intelligence. Where have I heard that before? Oh, right.
First full day back in office included a major announcement about artificial intelligence. The $500 billion project is being called Stargate. SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle will build data centers to power the next advancements in AI. Texas will serve as a launch point, with the first of the data centers being built in Abilene. The leaders of OpenAI and Oracle say the centers could change the future of medicine.
The data centers are actually under construction. The first of them are under construction in Texas. Each building's 500,000 square feet. There are 10 buildings currently being built, but that will expand to 20 and other locations beyond the Abilene location, which is our first location.
President Trump says Stargate will create more than 100,000 jobs in the U.S. Oracle Chairman Larry Ellison says they'll expand to 20 centers beyond Abilene.
So let's go back to the description of this very bizarre card game. Again, it says, "You wouldn't believe what's hidden in the miles and miles of Texas plains." They are counting on that. And then again, like I said, it says, "You may place one plot card under Texas." So I wonder what could be under Texas. Besides the fact that Jeff Bezos spent $42 million to build a quote unquote clock, who knows what this really is, and hid it inside the mountains of West Texas. Yeah, you remember that very strange story? A very large clock under West Texas. Well, West Texas will play an important role in this video. But outside of that, still the question remains, what could be hidden in the plains of Texas, under Texas? Well, when it comes to CERN, there is a theory, and I don't know if it's plausible or not, but again, there's a theory that CERN may sit on the Temple of Apollo. CERN has a particle accelerator. There are a lot of people that believe that CERN is not telling us the truth as to what they actually do, and they may be opening up portals, gateways, and so forth. The reason why people believe that CERN sits on top of the Temple of Apollo happens to be because CERN is very large. It spans over 3 countries, including France. The reason why there's a theory that CERN sits on top of the Temple of Apollo happens to be because it's near Saint-Denis-Pouilly, which is believed to have the Temple of Apollo. So why am I mentioning CERN? Well, like I said, a lot of people believe that a lot of strange things take place in CERN, but also Texas was going to be unique in those regards as well. Texas was going to have a massive super collider, a large hadron collider, a particle accelerator built right beneath it. Matter of fact, the tunnels are still there. They are massive. Monies were spent, billions of dollars. Yet for whatever reason, they just decided to, out of nowhere, cancel the project. Even though they put in all this time, money, and effort, it was just canceled. Why? Well, they said they didn't feel like spending any more money and closed shop. Was it really the money that canceled this project, or did they just happen to find something as they were digging beneath Texas and they decided to back away? Who really knows? But flash forward to today, as you see in the news, these tech giants, they came into this agreement, this deal with Trump, a $500 billion contract for this AI program, Stargate. What some people may not know is that even before this $500 billion deal, Stargate was being built. The data center was being built in Texas a year before Trump's presidency in 2024. Look at this Reddit post right here. It says Stargate Site 1, Texas, January 2025. This was over a month ago. This came out 2 days after the announcement of this $500 billion program. And people said, well, how could they have built this so fast? Well, no, that is because, again, this was being worked on back in 2024. But my thing is, did they build Stargate or did they find Stargate? Is this data center built on top of something just like CERN is theorized to have been built on top of the Temple of Apollo? Think of the name Stargate. What is a Stargate? A Stargate is a portal. And like I said in the beginning of the video, in 2024, around the same time this was built, there was an explosion of portal imagery as if they were celebrating something. So talking about 2024 portals, Stargate, the data center of Stargate is currently being built in Abilene, West Texas. And again, the construction had to have started in 2024. Well, something also strange happened in Abilene, Texas in 2024 as well, under Abilene, Texas.
For the second day in a row, an earthquake rattled homes in West Texas, but even some people here in North Texas felt this one. The 5.1 magnitude earthquake rumbled across the state at 9:28 a.m. The epicenter was near Hermleigh, Texas. That's about 200 miles west of Fort Worth. Yesterday, a smaller 2.5 magnitude quake hit that area, and a 4.9 magnitude earthquake hit there Monday. If you felt the earthquake this morning, you aren't alone. We've gotten reports of people feeling the shakes in cities like Aubrey, Granbury, and even to the east in Saxe and Collin County. Boy, that is that's a wide area there, Kylie.
Brandon, it sure is. I've also put up a graphic behind me to show you a closer look as well. But in fact, we've seen people that have reported feeling some residual tremors as far north as the Red River. And even a little bit closer to home, a couple folks in downtown Dallas saying that they felt some of that residual tremors as well. So this is a 5.1 magnitude earthquake. That's pretty large, especially for this part of the country. Again, reported a little before 9:30 this morning, just to the north and west of Abilene. And like Brandon mentioned, about 200 miles west of DFW.
That is right. It was reported back on July 29th, 2024, that 103 earthquakes in 1 week had struck West Texas around the location of Abilene. There was even a state of emergency declared. There were earthquakes as high as a 5.0 magnitude, which is a very nice size for this area, because this area of Texas naturally does not get earthquakes. It's not a very seismically active part of the country. To this day, there was never any concrete answer or any confirmed answer as to what caused these earthquakes, 103 earthquakes in 8 straight days. But they said that it's 99% likely to be linked to local oil fields, and that's always possible. But Texas is known for its oil fields, and these residents around Abilene and in Abilene, they were saying how they've never experienced anything like this before in Texas. Is it possible that something else was happening beneath the ground of Abilene involving Project Portal or Project Stargate? Maybe certain organizations were looking for something beneath Abilene and they found it. This data center could be a front, or perhaps this data center could research and power whatever they found beneath the ground. A portal, a Stargate.
Larry, why on this day one do you think you decided to do this? I assume you've been working on it for a long time.
We have been working on it for a long time. The first data centers are actually under construction in Texas already, and we'll be turning them over to Sam to start training their next model. The data center we already built, it was the largest computer ever built. The data center we're building will surpass it and be the largest computer ever built, which enables this AI.
Or perhaps in other words, this data center has a very massive computer that powers and enable whatever ancient technology they found. Some of you may be saying a Stargate, a portal, ancient technology under Texas. That is stupid. That is such a stupid theory. Where are you getting this from? I'm about to click off. Well, before you click off, let's not forget there were theories in the past of other Stargates residing beneath the earth. There is a Stargate believed to be in Sri Lanka. Matter of fact, if you were to look it up, it's an archaeological site and it's called Stargate on the map. There is a very specific reason as to why they call it Stargate, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But one of the biggest theories has to do with Iraq. Many believe that the United States invading Iraq was under false pretenses because we were told the United States was invading due to weapons of mass destruction. When no weapons of mass destruction were presented, we all believe that it was a lie. But maybe, just maybe, the United States did indeed get weapons of mass destruction, but not in the way that we're thinking. Again, truth in plain sight, double speaking. It is believed, not believed, it is a well-known fact that the United States had taken many artifacts after the invasion of Iraq. When the raids began, a lot of loot, a lot of gold, a lot of artifacts, tablets, and so forth were taken from Iraq during the invasion. And as you can see here, that's no conspiracy theory because news came out that in 2021, a lot of these items were returned, but who knows if these were the original items. Now, when this came out, and again, no weapons of mass destruction were presented, if you go to the CIA website, they released a FOIA document and it's titled Key Intelligence Task 91004. And as you read this, it says Collection Stargate. And it all has to do with the 1991 Iraqi war. It even says right here, large groups of objects now buried in the sand will be uncovered. And it all talks about the battle that is taking place in Iraq. But again, read this, Collection Stargate. A big theory came out that the United States actually invaded Iraq to access an ancient Stargate. A lot of people believe this to the point that once again, the fact checkers had to come out to quote unquote debunk this. This all has to do with the great ziggurat of Ur in Mesopotamia, which used to be the home of the Sumerians, and the Sumerians worshipped a group of deities called the Anunnaki. This article even says that this may be the nugget of truth in the Stargate narrative, with conspiracy theorists believing that the Anunnaki were actually extraterrestrials that gifted Stargate portals to the people living at the time. The reason why they say this is false happens to be because there is no scientific evidence to back up the claim that an alien Stargate is located in the Great Ziggurat of Ur. And even if there was, come on, do you really think they would tell us the truth? The article goes on to say that the location was initially used by the Iraqi leader, Saddam Hussein's forces, as a military facility, the Talil Air Base, which was largely destroyed by American forces in 1991. According to United States military records, then in 2003, the United States retook it and the Pentagon closed public access to the land adjacent to the structure after building a new airfield and military base there. The United States cut off all public access, which frustrated a lot of Iraqi citizens because to them this was a holy site and they couldn't access it until it was given back to the Iraq government in 2009. So who really knows what happened during that time period? This type of technology may have been considered weapons of mass destruction to certain people within the United States. I mean, who really knows the truth? Again, we were lied to. Artifacts were indeed looted. So why didn't Saddam Hussein, if he had this Stargate, if he had this technology, why didn't he use it against the United States? Well, maybe he couldn't. Maybe he didn't know how to. Maybe he was trying to, and certain people in the United States caught wind, and there we go. But going back to Sri Lanka, because like I said, it is believed that there is a Stargate there as well. Near the ancient Sri Lankan sacred city lies a mysterious megalithic rock art inscription known today as Sakwala Chakraya, considered to be at least 5,000 years old, and this is what it looks like. Matter of fact, there is mythology from the post-Buddhist era of Sri Lanka, which states that legendary heroic King Ravana may have had contact with beings living on other worlds and within other dimensions by means of energizing the Sakwala Chakraya with specific rites and incantations. Going back to Texas and Stargate, there were articles coming out that AI was being used to read ancient texts. Now, I don't know if that's truthful or not, but again, these were the articles that were coming out. And now they have this massive computer to energize, to enable the Stargate. If Iraq has one, and this is the reason why we invaded Iraq, if Sri Lanka is said to have one and their mythologies talk about it and so forth, why can't the Americas have one? Perhaps underground. Perhaps the Stargate accesses other dimensions. Things come through. Things with promises to cure all these diseases. Cancers have all these vaccines, like Larry Ellison says. And perhaps it does a lot of other things too, like it monitors the public. This Stargate, this portal, this AI is supposed to be the most powerful AI ever, doing things we have never seen before. And where are they getting this technology? Well, this technology was always here. Now they found a means to access it.
Yes, it takes a huge investment, but the result of the investment will be vaccines that prevent cancers, personalized medicine, where we never again run into a problem like 19 before, because we get an early warning. We know when COVID starts, when there are a handful of patients, rather than having to wait until it's become an epidemic and very difficult to control. This is a very large investment that affects all of humanity. Can I ask the three of you just really quickly to get a sense of where you see the...
But let's also not forget that Larry Ellison, who is behind Stargate, also said this in an interview.
Everyone would see it. Your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Ellison's vision is for AI to analyze data from this network of cameras in real time in an attempt to prevent crime while also tracking and influencing public behavior for a safer society. However, the idea raises serious privacy concerns. Critics argue.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please like, as any engagement does help the channel.
This is Dabu 7, and it looks like it's time to prepare for this reset. You know, the World Economic Forum Great Reset that never happened yet? It's about to. It's going to take place on Trump's watch, as it was designed to do this entire time. And he knows it. He's telegraphed it as much. Even before he got into office, he said that he was going to be taking a whopper on in terms of the economy, and that if anything happened, it wasn't their fault. Now, instantly, you have Doge making all these moves. And if you can get to a point to where the government isn't in debt anymore, then you stop printing the money. This could cause a credit collapse on the other side of the coin. All this could be fixed if our money was tied to gold. You know, the gold that's supposed to be in Fort Knox, but we don't know. If they reevaluate that gold, they revalue it, it will change the game dramatically. Now, if you look back through history, the biggest reset in history occurred in 1933 when Roosevelt confiscated gold from the citizens at $20.50 per ounce, then turned around and revalued it at $35. This was massive criminal theft, and it was done by executive order, not even an act of Congress. The next reset was in 1964 when Johnson took all the silver out of the dimes, quarters, and half dollars and then fraudulently replaced it with pot metal. The next big reset was in 1971 when Nixon seized redeeming gold to foreign governments, much as how Roosevelt had denied Americans doing it before. So history has showed us that the connection to gold and breaking away from the precious metals has hurt our dollar big time. And one good way to fix that would be to connect it back to gold somehow. To do that is going to take a complete reset of the game. Right now, the US government still values the gold that's supposed to be at Fort Knox at $42 an ounce on its balance sheets. If you revalue that, that gives them $750 billion in overhead to add to it just in the blink of an eye, just by revaluating gold. And not only is their gold going to go up, but so too would the whole market. It would cause the whole thing to continue to rise. And for this to work, backing a currency, many say that it needs to be somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 an ounce in gold. You will see an absolute explosion from here in gold and silver. Silver may do better numbers than gold. Playing catch up. That's where I would position if I was you. Hedge your bets there, and hopefully you're in a state where they're not taxing the precious metals. But this is incoming, and it's coming fast, and it can come at any time. We're seeing pressure being put on banks. We're seeing all kinds of different lawsuits popping up for money laundering and all this. It's like the stage is set for a big event. Only time will tell now, but I'm telling you, it's closer than ever. I'd get ready and I'd prepare for this reset. Join me for the live streams going.
Cool figure. Follow me.